Good afternoon and welcome. I declare open this hearing of the Senate Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade References Committee's inquiry into the management of Defence Estate assets. The committee will be conducting today's hearing in person and via teleconference. I'm Senator Collins, Chair of the committee, and I'm joined in the room by Deputy Chair, Senator Ralph Ciccone, and Senators Blyth and Lambie. Senator McLaughlin has also joined us via teleconference. These are public proceedings being audio streamed live by the Parliament's website, and a Hansard transcript is being made. I remind all witnesses that in giving evidence to the committee, they are protected by parliamentary privilege. It is unlawful for anyone to threaten or disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and such action may be treated by the Senate as a contempt. It is also a contempt to give false or misleading evidence. Witnesses also have a right to request to be heard in camera. If a witness objects to answering a question, they should state the ground upon which the objection is made, and the committee will determine whether it will insist on an answer having regard to the ground which is claimed. If the committee determines to insist on an answer, a witness may request that the answer be given in camera. I remind senators of their obligations under the Behaviour Code for Australian parliamentarians to treat witnesses with dignity, courtesy, fairness and respect. I remind committee members and witnesses who are appearing via teleconference and who are not speaking to please mute their microphones. And I now welcome representatives from RSL Tasmania, not RSL Launceston.
RSL Tasmania.
RSL Tasmania. Yes. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to the Senate committees has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, will you please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear today?
My name is John Hardy. I'm the CEO of RSL Tasmania.
And my name is Peter Williams. I'm the Northern Director of RSL Tasmania.
Thank you. And now I invite each of you to make a short opening statement, and at the conclusion we will throw to the senators to ask some questions.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'll make that statement.
Yep.
Look, first of all, Chair, Senators, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear in front of the committee today. It is a privilege, and we consider it a privilege to do so. Before I begin, I would also like to make an apology, and that is for Michael Gallagher. He is our state president, and today he is actually at RSL Australia at a board meeting in Canberra, so that's why he gives his apologies. As RSL Tasmania, we would like to make our position very clear. We do not oppose defence estate reform in any way. We accept that defence cannot retain every ageing building, plot of land, depot, parcel of land, simply because it historically has value or was once part of the defence estate. What facilities are not being required should be moved on, but something more capable and effective should all be supported and supplied. Our concern is not about buildings, and in this case history. Our concern is about capability. Tasmania supports more than 500 reservists across the three services, hundreds of Australian Defence Force cadets, and over its history in Tasmania has supported the national interest of Australia. Many Tasmanian reservists also provide critical skills, be that in health, engineering, logistics, communication, information technology, maritime operations and emergency management. So when we discuss defence estate in Tasmania, we are discussing workforce generation. We are discussing reserve readiness, training, mobilisation and national resilience. We are not discussing buildings or history. Our concern with the original estate proposal is the scale and the absence and continued absence of a clear, articulated replacement for the capability plan. 15 of the 16 sites in Tasmania are to be relocated, identified closed, divested or lease terminated. That is a significant reduction in Tasmania. The question we have is simple. What replaces the capability in Tasmania? So Derwent Barracks is a good example. RSL Tasmania is not opposed to surplus land around defence estates, in this case Derwent. If it can be released for housing, that's an excellent outcome. Tasmania desperately needs housing. It desperately needs veteran housing. But Derwent also contains vehicle storage, workshops, logistics equipment, equipment storage and other functions directly supporting our reserve capability. Before these facilities disappear, we need to be confident that capability has somewhere to go. Currently, we are not convinced. The same principle applies across the state. So if we take Youngtown, Devonport or Burnley, can it be replaced by modernising properly, resourcing facilities and providing better reserve, cadet, recruitment and training capability? Well, if it can, we support it. But those replacements need to exist. The property needs to exist. It needs to be properly funded and supported. And not only the Defence Force Tasmania for today, but for the Australian capability of tomorrow. We remain particularly concerned about Stony Head. At the time when Australia is focused on readiness, mobilisation, workforce growth, emerging technologies, we believe there is a strong case to examine whether Stony Head should indeed be strengthened rather than disposed of. It has the potential to support live firing, field craft, vehicle training, uncrewed system, emergency services, disaster response, and, just as importantly, joint integration activities with other agencies. There is also the broader workforce. Cadets cannot simply be tenants of Defence Estate. Currently there are 280 cadets and 50 what we call adults. They make up the biggest users of the current Tasmanian Defence Estate. But this is particularly significant in regional Tasmania. Cadets connect defence to young Australians and their communities. For some, it becomes the first steps for reserves or indeed regular forces. Any estate reform must preserve reasonable regional access for cadet opportunities, but it must be meaningful. RSL Tasmania has tried throughout this process to be constructive. At St Helens, for instance, Argonaut, or what we call Project Argonaut, rather than simply oppose defence withdrawal from the existing cadet facility, we are working closely with Breakaday Council Mayor on the model that could preserve the cadet present location while creating a veteran hub facility and a community asset. This should not become a debate about keeping everything and selling everything. It should be about designing the defence estate Tasmania needs for the future. Our position can be summarised in one sentence. Estates should follow capability. Capability should never be determined simply by what a state costs. Is it cheaper to retain or dispose of? We feel that is part of this case. If the outcome is fewer defence properties in Tasmania, but stronger training, stronger reserve capability, better facilities, better recruitment pathways and an improved readiness, RSL Tasmania can support that. But if the outcome is simply for a smaller defence footprint, reduced regional presence, lost capability and an assumption that someone sometime will create later what is needed, we believe that would be a strategic mistake. Finally, Chair, I would like to raise a concern about the consultation process. RSL Tasmania welcomes consultation and has participated in good faith. However, we are increasingly concerned that consultation risks becoming an exercise in explaining how a decision has already made and how it will be implemented, rather than generally asking whether those decisions are the right ones. There is a significant difference between consultation around implementation and consultation that can influence a good outcome. If stakeholders are being asked for their views after a fundamental decision to close or dispose of a facility that effectively has been settled, people will understandably question, is this meaningful consultation or is it indeed a tick box exercise? We strongly encourage the committee to examine this issue. Genuine consultation must include the willingness to change course, where the evidence shows defence capability, workforce generation and regional access will be diminished. Otherwise, consultation becomes notification. And on decisions of this significance to the Australians' future defence capability, we believe Tasmania deserves more than notification. Before I close, Chair, I do have two documents. The first document is a letter from RSL Tasmania to Minister Khalil, and this is basically what we call our Argonaut project, and it outlines how we could see a future with Argonaut, but it also puts the first step of how RSL can start to help in this area around cadets. We are very concerned. This letter was sent on the 20th of July. You will probably not be surprised that we haven't received anything from that letter. Can I give that to you, please, sir? The next letter is a reply from the Federal Minister Braddon. This letter clearly lays out in the second to last paragraph of where we actually are with our consultation process. I will read this very line. While the decision to divest these properties is final, that's quite clear. Now, there is also other evidence we're not going to show today. You can go online and see it, where ministers have been saying they've already made their mind up. That is not that good consultation. We get that difficult decisions need to be made. We understand that. But it's consultation or it is indeed information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Hardy. And Major Williams, did you have something you wanted to contribute?
Yes, I'd like to make a short statement. Chair and Senators, I'd also thank you for the opportunity to appear before the Senate committee today. I'm coming from a slightly different angle, and I'm going to talk about lived experience and understanding and capability. To do that, I've got to bang on about myself a little bit. I served for 47 years as an officer in both the ARA and Army Reserve. I've served in several corps, including Artillery, Transport, Infantry and Ordnance Corps. I've had several regimental appointments, including Battalion 2IC of the 1240 Royal Tasmania Regiment. I've served as a staff officer and a planner in headquarters up to the divisional level. My service finished 5 years ago when I reached compulsory retirement age. During my service, I completed several tours of operational service, which included East Timor during Operations Tanager and Citadel, Operation Sumatra Assist in 2005, East Timor during Operation Astute in 2006, the Sudan with the United Nations as a Operations and Plans Officer in the headquarters in Khartoum, and in Operation Slipper in 2013, where I served as Development and Sustainment Chief in the US Army Regional Command South, Kandahar, Afghanistan. During my last 17 years in the ARA, most of my postings were in operational and logistic planning roles and capability development and training. I was primarily involved in international engagement deployment training, operational exercise planning activities. Also, I became a planning specialist, particularly in regards to humanitarian disaster relief operations and training. I'm a fully qualified Joint Coalition and International Operational Logistic Planner. I also graduated from the Expeditionary Warfare Training Group Pacific in San Diego, where I completed the Expeditionary Warfare Staff Planning course and the International Coalition Staff Planning course. I have a sound understanding in regards to developing operational capability in individuals, capability bricks and units. Most of my A Reserve postings were here in Tasmania, were predominantly with 1240 Battalion Royal Tasmanian Regiment. That said, I've been posted to other units in all locations in Tasmania and have a clear understanding of the capability that can be produced by these organisations. I understand the importance of these locations in developing capability now and into the future. Therefore, I consider myself to be a witness with vast lived experience and an understanding of operational capability generation that has occurred here in Tasmania for more than a quarter of a century. I'm one of 24 officers that in 1999 were deployed as secondments to headquarters AST and other headquarters to support the operations in Timor. This state has generated capability from individuals to capability bricks and whole units. 2 Force Support Battalion is probably one of the most deployed reserve, was one of the most deployed reserve units in Australia. With specialists, doctors, nurses, all sorts of units have been deployed out of Tasmania. A company here in Launceston has generated dozens of soldiers to all operations that Australia served or participated in the first 25 years of this century. And on that note, I will speak to, during this, to capability that's generated by this state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just ask a couple of questions and then I'll pass it across to my colleagues. I just wanted to ask about, I guess, the impact of the closing of 15 sites here in Tasmania on the regions. We know it's going to have a big impact on the cadets, but do you feel like the strategy of this defence estate sell-off has taken into consideration, I guess, the regional strategy for Tasmania? I mean, what is going to be the impacts when you get out of places like Launceston and Hobart?
So I think there needs to be an understanding from every part that, let's say it what it is, Tasmania is the second most remote state territory in Australia. I think when you think of it like that in that terms, is the current plan, or part of the plan, because if we are honest, the capability plan moving forward isn't quite clear. I think it hasn't been thought through in fine detail. There is a certain amount of distance that volunteers, cadets, cadet families will travel. And I think if we work off the current principle for planning, they're going to go outside that range. I think there's also got to be an understanding that I'm not quite sure that people that originally looked at this understood that things like drill nights still exist every week. It's not once a month or twice a month or once every 6 weeks. People still go to drill nights. And I suppose really with this is, what are we trying to change? Because currently some of the locations that they're going to close do have good support. In terms of cadets, some of these locations too have good support. And what does this tell regional Australia about what Canberra is going to achieve or try to achieve? It's not further integration into the regions. In fact, it's anything but that.
And in terms of the capability and I guess the strategic implications, so you know, the audit report has the rationale is that they want to move the force posture to the north, and you look at, I guess, the case of Tasmania and closing 15 sites out of 16, I guess sends a signal that Tasmania is not part of our strategic defence. And I guess, you know, I'd be looking for a bit of commentary from you, given, you know, the nature of the circumnavigation of the PLA Navy recently and how vulnerable that would leave the southern part of Australia if we weren't to reinvest in these sites.
Okay, so I could answer to some points there. Basically, as a planner, when we're looking at things, we're particularly now in the modern operational settings where we develop units to meet a certain task or mission. And we draw on a lot of different units to get the capabilities that we need. And this is done by individual reinforcements to a unit or picking up a particular capability, i.e. like a medical unit that has a surgical platoon or an ICU unit that becomes part of a bigger organisation, or a transport squadron or whatever. So we build the unit out of blocks or bricks, as we call it, and then very rarely do we take a full unit and deploy that nowadays. We actually build the units up and then deploy them. A good example here in Tasmania was FLS in 2002. The whole unit was deployed here, so a unit of about 120 people all came from here in Tasmania. So it was a logistic unit supporting the force, OSPAT, in thing. That unit was generated out of here. And the capability bricks came from here and Victoria. So some of the transport elements, some of the heavy equipment come out of Victorian units. But that unit was generated out of here in Tasmania.
Okay. In a media release on your website, you said that the Deputy Prime Minister, Defence Minister Richard Marles, assured RSL Tasmania that there would be full consultations with the veterans and broader community over a 2-year period before any final divestment decisions were made. But only 3 weeks later, the Prime Minister announced that Derwin Barracks would be redeveloped into a housing and community hub. So can you please just confirm for us the sequence of that events, please, and whether you think that the Defence Minister's assurance was honoured?
So the sequence was we were given about 48 hours notice that the Minister for Defence was coming down. He then came down and we had a comfortable conversation around the board table for about 45 minutes regarding our concerns. He then assured us exactly as we laid out on our website, and we were very clear about that because we need to ensure that our members are aware. We then cleared that media release with the Minister's office to ensure he was happy, and they were. So everything we said in that media release we stand beside. He assured it would be a 2-year process. So it would be fair to say that the board and I were somewhat surprised when we were given 48 hours notice that the Premier was going to make an announcement about the divestment of Derwent Barracks and the property. If I'm honest, which I always try to be, there was rather a heated conversation between me and Minister Khalil about how we thought that we'd been blindsided. And to be clear, we do think we were blindsided. And that is something that our President wanted us to make very clear in this. We feel that we entered this, as the previous said, with an honest, open hand. And we feel very strongly that that did not become the case. We put out the media release supporting the federal government, as long as it was a 2-year process. 3 weeks later, we were doing a rearguard action based around an announcement around Derwent Barracks. It was not a good place to be, but we feel that we believe we operate honestly and with integrity, but we do feel that we were completely blindsided, and we still feel that now.
Are you aware of reports that the media, the press conference was chosen on a day when the Prime Minister knew that nobody would actually be on Derwent Barracks that day? The units were away?
No, we're not. And look, we have to be, RSL Tasmania is very clear about the sort of side noise. We'll take no part in that. You know, we had an honest meeting with a minister that we respect, as we respect all ministers. And we took his word as gospel because he's an elected member by the people of Australia. And that was the end of that. How had this rolled out 3 weeks later was very surprising. And when I mean a heated conversation, I do mean a heated conversation. We were not happy at all. Whether that rolled out to having people on site or not later, that had nothing to do with us. And because we were kept in confidence, they were making a media release, we kept our word. So we didn't turn up, even though we knew it was there. We did exactly as we said we would do. So no, I'm unaware of any activities beyond that.
Okay, thank you. And have you requested a meeting with the Minister for Defence since that meeting that you had?
No. So what we did is we requested that that Minister Khalil came down to our Congress and spoke about the divestment, of which he did. Were our members present particularly more informed or pleased with that? No, not really. In fact, he made it very clear in that meeting, as he has made in many other, and you can check that by social media, that he believed, his words were, you know, I have made the decision. And he was quite clear about that.
Yes, I have also heard that too at community information sessions. Thank you very much, Mr Harding. Major Williams. I'm going to pass to my colleagues now. I'll just pass the call to Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Chair. Right, okay. So out of all the facilities going, how much veteran housing have we been promised? And have you got a hub in Hobart yet?
Yeah, we have got a hub in Hobart, yeah.
Okay. Is that substantial? Is that just a pop-up one until we get what we need?
No, so the veteran, so for those that don't know, we have a project called Veteran Hub, which is part of the Veterans and Family Centres run by DVA. We have a hub in Hobart, we have a hub in Launceston, and we have 5 spokes around the state. And they are delivering what we need them to deliver. They're starting to grow. They're still very young, so that's very good. In terms of veteran housing, we have received from the HAF fund, which is part of, not a part of HAF fund. We did receive as part of the Acute Housing Fund, we have received 1.8 million from the federal government to develop homes. We're going to deliver 6 homes in Moona, in Glenorchy, and at the same time, we use that leverage to get support from the state government to get 6 homes from the state government, which will also be delivered in Chigborough. So we are starting to deliver in that phase. It's very interesting you mention housing, because when you look at the development now in the half space, I think we're on tranche 5 or schedule 5, whatever it may be. It's quite restricted for people like us to deliver because they want to deliver units of 200. Well, organisations like us are never going to put 200 veterans in homes in one place. That wouldn't work. They need to stay within their communities, and we assist them within their communities. So that's why we've gone for small ink spot approaches around the state. And we see this as one of the main areas that we need to really push hard into, to the extent that our strategic plan does see us having a target of 38 dwellings within 9 years. So we are 38 dwellings. So we are pushing really hard in that space.
What is the, do you have the updated number of homeless veterans or around about? I know we can never get that right. Do you have any idea?
So our social workers will tell me, as they told me yesterday, that they believe it's somewhere between 70 and 100 homeless veterans in Tasmania.
Okay. All right. And how long are those homes going to take?
So the first ones, so the state government ones, we hope they are complete by April.
Okay.
The Railton ones, which is the ones we're doing through Veteran Hub, we hope they're completed by April, May. The federal government ones, which we're doing through Glenorchy City Council, there are some issues about ownership of land, because we found the land for them. They didn't tell us, we told them they had land. So that might be slightly delayed, but I would hope that all these dwellings are built by the end of 27. Okay,
that's great. All right, okay. So now I want to talk about the training areas. So they're closing Buckland, they're closing sorry, what's one in Launceston here? Stonyhead. They're closing that. So where am I doing my weapons training now?
There's no locations that you can use. The range facilities, for example, in the civilian arena wouldn't meet the requirements of a defence range in any shape or form. It's been made quite clear to us by the state government they have no interest in reservists or cadets operating in state forests or national parks, particularly with firearms. So it makes it very hard for any training to be conducted in this state to develop capability, particularly with the types of training that we're doing for soldiers now that require a lot of live firing exercise and activity, both at the individual level and right up to vehicle weapons firing as well.
Okay, so but without Stonyhead now, we won't have that capacity.
That is correct.
That's correct. So and the driver training, now that we won't have Buckland and Stonyhead, where's the recovery part of that done?
The main driver training area was
training, besides being on Tasmanian roads,
yes,
which they don't want us on either. Where are we going?
Well, the main training area for driving was in the Buckland area.
Yep.
The road training would be conducted like that, but if anybody's aware of the 40 mite vehicles, they're quite a large vehicle, and they require certain regulations to be met when driving on outside roads and that.
I think if I can just recap on that very quickly, although Peter's done a pretty good job. Look, this is about force generation, right, and capability. How can we have a capability in this state or generate force if we can't even fire our weapons? So that's the reality of this. There is currently 2 ranges. There is one at Stonyhead and one at Buckland. Currently, both those ranges are to be scheduled to be sold, okay, and closed. So where do they go? Do they get on a plane? What's the incentive for someone to join the reserves? Because let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
If you join the reserves, you want to fire your guns, don't you? Well, when I joined, that's why I joined. So they're now not going to be able to fire weapons here. That is a strategic mistake, particularly when, if you look at Stonyhead, Stonyhead is in a really good place. It's on the north coast. It's quite isolated, so if you want to do UAV training or stuff that you don't really want people to see too much of, it's great. If you want to do amphibious work, it's great. It allows all these things to be done. We're not suggesting that we need two, but we need one. So currently, in the current plan, in this, force capability plan, the force in Tasmania will not have a place in Tasmania to fire weapons. And, well, you could, where are they going to do, vehicle exercises? So where can they have a safe place to go and really sort of dig down into these vehicles? How do they do recovery? How do they operate from vehicles? You could really push this down into real granular level. But force generation requires that force is able to train in delivering force.
And you've got to remember, we're not talking a typical rifle range where you've got a butt out about 500 metres. There's all types of different shooting activities that the soldiers have to do, from basic rifle drills right through to using all sorts of weapons. Hand grenades is a different range. Anti-armour is a different range. Machine guns have a different range. All these ranges have different requirements for them to be operated, and there's very few areas that you can do it in the state. There's already in both Buckland and Stony Head purpose-built ranges. But the beauty of these ranges, what you have to do, and the units down here do it quite a lot, they build their own ranges to meet a specific requirement in their training. So it's a certain type of battle shooting that they do. Those ranges are not there, they actually build them for the activity. And to do that, you need an area. Both Buckland and Stony Head in particular, have impact areas that have been operating for nearly 100 years.
So to clarify on the impact area, for those that don't know us, or some of the listeners that might be watching, so an impact area is where we have fired live munitions into it. So some of that munitions will not detonate, and it will sit in the ground. What are they going to do with that space? Because no one's going to build on it, no one's ever going to go on it. What, we're going to run a few sheep over it? I mean, that's really what we're looking at. It's understanding that we're not talking about what let's call it a gallery range where we sit on a firing line and people shoot at targets. We're talking about manoeuvre ranges where soldiers go through manoeuvre with live weapons. So they actually practice what they do. We don't have one, and if we lose that, we don't have the other as well. If we take that a step further, where we don't have ranges because we're going to lose them, but where are we going to store our munitions? Because we're going to lose that as well. So we're not going to have munition storage, and we're not going to have ranges. Now, people will be thinking, well, they can go somewhere else for that. When a Royal Australian Air Force aircraft lands in Hobart, they come in live, so they have a defence suite on them. They take that suite off, and that suite has to be stored somewhere, right? Because it could be flares or chaff, that sort of stuff that you would understand. Where's that going to go? Because we won't have anywhere to store it. So for the flights that are going south to the ice, where are they going to store the stuff that we need to keep in a separate place? Because it can't just sit on the pan on the plane. So there's a whole sway of things here that really does need some real micro detail put into it. In the military, there is a plan for a plan, and even the plan has a plan. I see no plan. All I see is accountants with big sweeping hands across the map going, oh, we can lose this and this and this. Well, we can, but we shouldn't, and if we do, understand the impact.
What about the impact of, and I'm sure Tasmanians know this, nothing out of the bag, but we've had SAS, I'm not sure about the commandos, we've had the regiments, certainly in my early day, they used to come down and use those facilities quietly, but we're also seconded out to them, which gave us better training, that sort of thing. We're going to lose all that, and I'm telling you, I'm not joining the army if I can't pick up a weapon. Goodbye. So Tasmania's finished. That's how I see it, because there's no point in joining up. And I'm not showing up on a Tuesday not to do drill for 3 hours while it suck off taxpayers' money. I've seen this when they depleted back in the 90s, mid-90s, when they said, by the way, all you reserve units, you transport reserve units, we're dropping the amount of fuel you could use. We sat around Tuesday nights for ages. I have to bring civilians in for that who have got daytime jobs, and you wonder why they're leaving. So that is my biggest problem. And per capita, over Vietnam War, over the last war, we supply a great deal number, if not the most per capita, from Tasmanian. Tasmanians love our armed forces.
Yes, one stage in the last 20 years, the Australian Army had 40% Tasmanians serving in it.
There you go.
Okay, so and they did a bit of investigation, asked the question why. Can I go back to the ammunition?
Because I do want you to speak about that, because I do notice from the other place, the member for Braddon, on the issues that you guys raised, that she assured us that the defence capability currently based in Tasmania will stay in the state. Well, I don't see how that's going to happen.
That's right.
So can somebody tell me from how that's happening?
Well, it's not really, because in the consultation that was conducted here in Launceston, we had 3 of the mayors here, Launceston, Break Day and Meander Valley, that were in the consultation. The ammunition issue come up, and all 3 of these mayors said, the question was asked, what would you have an ammunition facility in your council area? All of them said no. So currently the only place we can put ammunition is where it is. Okay, and you've got to remember that ammunition facility isn't just for the Defence Force. Tasmania Police ammunition is in there as well. As to specialist capability for Special Forces, there is stuff here in Tasmania that is in Derwent Barracks. It's a capability that's here. Where's that going to go?
I mean, to drill down into the munitions and maybe weapons as well. So we're not suggesting for a moment that you've got to keep everything you've got. I mean, there would be little sense in that. But Stony Head is a particular type of range. So things like unmanned aircraft. So if you look at this for a second, currently we fly munitions into Burnie. We then drive them down the country to put them in a munitions facility in the south of the country. And then whenever people want stuff, they go to that facility to potentially drive it back up the state. So here's an idea. Keep Stony Head. Put a munitions facility on Stony Head. So when you drive on, you get your munitions, you go onto the range, you drive off. This isn't new. It's stuff that's done anyway. Now, that would be a real capability, right? Because I can go to a range, get munitions, use the munitions on the range, come off the range, put the munitions back in, job done. And also that drive from Burnie to the range, that's where the munitions run. So that's shorter and safer as well, instead of driving halfway down the country. So this is where consultation could have real purpose, because everybody here knows this. Everybody here comes to us and said, well, you could do this and you could do that. If that was meaningful consultation, then clearly those ideas would come forward. But at the moment, it's not. At the moment, it's information. So cadets, the concept of closing cadets down. Look, this is folly, and I'll give you an example why. So you spoke earlier on about, we talk about force generation. So there are some fairly senior officers in the Australian Defence Force that were cadets in Tasmania. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they were cadets in Tasmania. So are we going to lose that? So we're going to put cadet forces back into schools. Which schools? Public schools that I went to?
No.
Because they won't take the weapons. Will it be private schools? Maybe. Maybe private schools will take them. But if private school takes them, what about people like me that that really struggled in a school? I've got to go to a school that I struggled in to go to the cadets. So the very thing that I can't get my head around because I was 14 and I wasn't great at school, I'm going to go to that school now. I'm not going to the school because I hate the school, because right now I'm a young boy and it's not working for me. What defence gave me is it trained me, it taught me, it taught me how to be who I am now. That would all be gone because I'm not going to that cadet centre in that school. I cannot be alone with this. Children struggle with school and we need to give them other outlets. Regional Tasmania will struggle with this concept. To go into a school, well, there won't be any weapons there because schools won't have it. So how are we going to do this? Just put it into, well, I'm sorry to say this.
I don't know, but you've got to store all their equipment as well. You've got packs, you've got webbing, you've got all that sort of stuff. These public systems are already overloaded, especially like you said from here. So I don't think, I rang up Ransom Public Schools and they just went, you've got to be kidding. So, and I'm hearing this morning they're not having much luck on the committee doing this either because they're not going to in Tasmania.
And there's stories, and you've only got to look at the naval cadets. They have small boats and those type of things. So they take up a fair bit of space.
That's right.
And when you go around to all the cadet units, they've got that type of equipment.
Yeah, I don't know any school that's got the area to put that in, unless we're giving them a new warehouse there somewhere if they can fit it in.
There is solutions with this. There is solutions. The communities will find solutions, but you've got to engage with the communities. You've got to have meaningful dialogue where they believe they are listened to. There is ways around a lot of what we're talking about here. No one is saying keep a building for a building's sake, but consultation must be meaningful. It can never be information, otherwise the shutters just come down.
Well, I would think, Mr Hardy, with the money they're going to make off some of these things, there's nothing reason why we couldn't have grand, but the problem is it's the cart before the horse, and we haven't even built the new facilities, and we're still arguing about, well, we don't know what the hell we're doing with cadets. God help us with the recruiting and how much more money that's going to cost. That's what bothers me, because kids are just not going to start from here. I have no questions, sorry.
Thank you, Senator Lavey. I'll just pass to my colleague, Senator Blythe, but first I'd just a little response to, I guess, the point of the rifle ranges closing down, and we will hear in a little while from Colonel Byrne about the history of Tasmanian Force, and that every company since the 40th Battalion was formed as briefed to never ever let this happen again to Tasmanian soldiers, that they were sent over to war without, some of them without ever having fired a rifle, terribly undertrained, and it ended disastrously. And had we done those consultations and listened to the people here, then perhaps that would have been shared. Senator Blythe.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you both for appearing. And Mr Hardy, you had a very substantial opening statement, and I just wanted to drill in a little bit to some of what you shared around the consultation, and certainly I think it's fair to say we share your concerns in terms of the consultation or lack thereof. Before the government's release of their Defence Estate audit, which was done back on the 4th of February this year, did anyone from the government or through Defence reach out to you to have any kind of consultation around defence assets here in Tasmania?
No. So there's a thing called DAD.
It's not an acronym.
Decide. So DAD, decide, announce, defend.
Yeah.
So
that's essentially,
that's where we are with this. Look,
yeah.
I think it's necessary that we must see this as moving forward. We've got to be quite clear here. We're not opposed to some really meaningful change where we really invest in capability in Tasmania. We want that because soldiers, sailors, aviators, they want to feel that what they do really means something. What they're trying to achieve is really meaningful. That isn't meaningful if you haven't got a range to go on. Yeah. It's not meaningful if you can't shake your vehicles out. It's just not. So why would they join? People talk about, it's all got to be in the north. That's fine, but that's not developing capability. The capability comes from the whole of the country. And if it generates a spear point in the north, great. That's what it's supposed to do. So no, the consultation with us has been limited. I think, look, to be fair, we were very surprised when we got an invitation to speak to the Minister of Defence, and then 3 weeks later to be hit broadsided by an announcement where they'd make a decision. We didn't expect that. We took, as we should do, we took senior ministers' words for their word.
Yep, as you should be able to do, but we are learning in the coalition that is not a wise way to operate.
Well, that would be your thoughts, not mine.
Yes, no, they are my thoughts. No, in terms of and we've got to see some sites here this morning. In terms of some of the heritage sites that are looking to be divested back to council areas, local government here, does it concern you, I guess, from the RSL's perspective, that heritage status for some of these sites is removed once the Commonwealth divests the assets, so that heritage status doesn't carry over? Does it concern you that some heritage sites right here in the middle of Launceston could essentially be demolished.
There is only one, which is Patterson Barracks
Yeah.
in Launceston. That's already been
It's already gone.
gone. It's divested. It's being used as a temporary home for A Company 1240 Battalion.
Yep.
That's because they've been completely moved out of Youngtown without any other facility being prepared for them.
Yep.
So they're living currently at the moment in a building that's falling down and
Yep.
has gaps in it that big.
We did get to see some of the more rundown components. I think that was in building, I forget which number it was, but
And they were moved out for a renovation.
Okay.
This is how bad the consultation's been. They were, in fact, Youngtown, I was part of the planning process, was
Okay.
supposed to be rebuilt, right, completely. And there
Yep.
was plans that were at the 90% stage. The money was already available for the buildings to take place. That disappeared. It then became a renovation.
Yeah, this-
That renovation was still happening. The unit was moved out, thinking they were moving to have the buildings renovated, to find they didn't have a home anymore.
Yeah, this
When
was
were
the
those
Nicolik.
renovations supposed to happen? When did that all? When
That was-
That was the Nicolik money, Nicolik.
That's right. Yes, that's
yeah.
correct. The money was there to do the renovations. Yeah, Youngtown. Okay. And in fact, the minister didn't even recognise that Youngtown existed. When he briefed us, he actually spoke about, oh, that'll be all right. The reservists will be able to travel up to the new centre in Burnie, right? An hour and a half up the road every Tuesday night, every weekend.
yeah, well,
So just to be clear,
Before I did ask a question. When were those renovations supposed to happen? When was all that in train?
They were supposed to be happening now.
Now?
A Company was supposed to move back into a renovated facility.
When were the renovations announced? Do you remember how long?
Where are we now? So it was last year. Well, they've been there for a while since. The original project where they were going to rebuild was 5 years ago now, okay? And then it changed into when the facility for the rebuild, the money for the rebuild disappeared, and I was personally involved in this, it then turned into a renovation in the last 5 years, and A Company moved out of there thinking they were coming back to a renovated building and only find that it was going to be sold off. And have you been out to Youngtown?
Yes, we started there this morning.
So you see the difference in the facility between where they are in Patterson
Yeah.
Street, Patterson Barracks, which is
Yep.
totally unsuitable,
Yep.
to where they moved from, which actually with a bit of renovation would be absolutely right on the money for a infantry rifle company to work out
Which
of.
is what it's supposed to be.
yeah.
So just to mention, you mentioned Patterson Barracks. I just
Yep.
want to be clear. Right, so that isn't part of that 15 of 16. That's another one. But it had gone before
So that's
this announcement.
We were told today it's not gone. That the heritage, because I was asking about the heritage there, and they said
It's gone back to
the intention is that
It's
it
gone back
is
to
listed as a condition of sale,
Yep.
but not that the sale had gone through. So is that site's gone already?
It was 2017.
That is our understanding.
Yeah.
I said
Right,
we're
so-
leasing it.
So Defence is leasing it back? Is that?
Oh, we
That's
wouldn't.
probably a question that
We have
need
no-
to ask others.
Okay.
But that's why Patterson Barracks, when you look at the extended list, isn't on the list.
Yeah, because the
It's not on the-
conversations there this morning were quite.
The other thing is Stony Head. So Stony Head's closest to Launceston, guys, just so you know. So to have a regiment or something in Launceston, which is exactly what Youngtown should have been running off,
Yeah.
to have these grunts and that to use in that, well, that's just all gone amiss. The original idea from the Liberals, which was very good from Mr Nicolik at the time, to invest money in that was in 2017, and we're still waiting for that investment to go through, which obviously then Labor won, and that's all gone wayside. But that's the whole point, to back up Stony Head.
Yeah.
And
For
this
the
is-
training facility. So you've got the vehicles there, you've got the grunts there, everybody knows the area.
And this is a unit that over the last 25 years has literally supplied soldiers to every single operation that's occurred
Yes, it has.
in the last 25 years, including all humanitarian, including all disaster ones. We've got soldiers there that have literally deployed, reserve soldiers deployed to everywhere, Solomons, Timor, all over, company groups and all that. And they haven't got a home.
Well, no experience going through the lower ranks now.
Now, to be fair to the federal government, which we must be, their announcement is you don't need to be.
Say we don't have to.
I definitely need to be. We should be. We act in good faith. There is an announcement, or they're on about the Maritime College in Launceston.
Yes.
And that's probably what they're trying to concept round.
Yep.
which
Yeah,
is
we've
fine.
been out there, not much
We-
concept going on.
Yeah, well, but the point being is, again, that has difficulties. So that's a college.
Yes.
So what are we going to do on Wednesday night? Have bushmasters driving through the college with machine guns on the roofs?
Which it doesn't seem to be it's going to be big enough, because we went out to see that site this morning and it was, I think one digger was operating and some freshly moved around piles of dirt. And this vision that you were going to be able to have, I think, cadet units, which are up to about 70 cadets each operating on different nights, all being there together, but it's not a very large site.
No, and I think it probably goes a little bit further. So if you take that as the Derwent Barracks experience,
Yeah.
yes, you can close the site, but I think it would be fair to say that you are not going to be able to put those vehicles on Anglesey Barracks. It's tight.
Yeah.
So currently,
Yeah, okay.
there is no plan for the plan.
Okay. And this was where they were saying that I think they kept saying, oh, you know, we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. We're going to get to that later. At the moment, we're just doing this. But I think, to your point, that there is no real plan for the plan. It just seems to be, we'll just see what happens.
And quite frankly, if they were to turn soil tomorrow, it'd still be 2 years before those facilities would
Yeah,
be
no, they're just
occupied.
doing that now, so.
I was going to say, they're turning the soil now. We were told it would be ready.
But that's
end of
for the
this-
cadet one that
Yeah,
had
just
already
Yeah.
been programmed, not to put a reserve unit in there with the equipment we're describing.
Yeah.
Once you start putting 40 mics and bushmasters and Hawkeyes in there,
Yeah.
that space is going to be chewed up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And we've got to consider the type of armour, equipment of the soldiers, the body armour, all that has to be stored a certain way.
Yeah.
You've got to build an armoury. Steyr armouries are not cheap to build, right? And these are all these type of things. So we still haven't got a facility. There is some really great facilities in Canberra. The multi-user depot is brilliant how that's been structured. Okay, that was a unit that belonged to the unit I was in, Fire Brigade. But those facilities are a long way off. You can't share the facilities as easy between a cadet unit and thing. It's not about hot desking where the reservists can move out and the cadet officer can come in. It doesn't work that way at all.
Yeah. Okay.
So I look forward to not having any more training established and having helicopters and watching the army come out of ropes all over you, Tas, then. Will you do that? That'd be spectacular. What, no fire shows as well going on like they do at Pucker? Shame. Okay. Thank you.
Missed opportunity there.
Missed opportunity.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we're over time, but thank you both for being so generous with your time and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for appearing as witnesses and for your evidence today. I don't believe there are any questions on notice, but if there are, could you please return them to the Secretariat by Friday the 4th of September. Thank you very much. I now call the Mayor of Launceston, Major Garwood. Got this right? Oh. That's okay. Okay. So sorry, it's not Major, it is Mayor, correct? Mayor, you are...
Yeah, no major for me.
Oh, here.
Well, you got no mates today.
They're all in workshops.
Oh, you've got them working.
Thank you.
Some hello. Great.
Thank you, Mayor Garwood. Well, it was just a J slipped in for the Y, that's okay. Mayor Garwood, thank you very much for appearing today, and I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to Senate committees has been provided to you.
Thank you.
For the Hansard record, would you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear today?
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Matthew Garwood, the Mayor for the City of Launceston.
Welcome. Would you like to make a short opening statement?
Yes, thank you. Chair and members of the committee, we really do appreciate the opportunity to appear here today on behalf of the City of Launceston, and I'd like to also recognise those that have served that are in the room and pay our respects to those as well. I think it's really important and great to see some of our own senators that have been so passionate about this, as are you all. Launceston has a long and proud connection with defence, veterans, cadets and military heritage, some of that you've just spoken on, that you've seen already around our beautiful city here in Launceston. We really do recognise the importance that defence and the role that it plays in our community, and we really appreciate the opportunity to contribute to this inquiry regarding the future management of defence estate assets. And I think, as we've just so passionately heard, and you would have heard throughout this inquiry, around the connection to defence and to those that have served and that those are looking to serve, for us here at the City of Launceston, the inquiry, it's not just about land and buildings. It's for us really about preserving strategic capability, strengthening community outcomes and really protecting the military heritage and ensuring that these public assets continue to deliver public value. So for us, that key principle is really around the City of Launceston believing in where defence assets are no longer required for operational purposes, government should first consider opportunities for the ongoing public, community, heritage or civic values and those uses before considering disposal to private market. This aligns closely with one of the matters that's being examined, obviously, by the committee itself, and as that local example that you've seen today is the Patterson Street Barracks, noting that it is not on the divestments because that is already going through a process that exists. I'm looking forward to being able to address some of what I've heard here in the room around heritage and the local heritage register and the strengths that Launceston and Tasmania hold around being able to retain and not being able to legislatively demolish some of those buildings also, but noting Patterson Barracks as the sole entity is covered under local heritage, but there are some elements to that site that are not. We know that with Patterson Street Barracks, it's been identified within the Launceston City deal as a future asset to be divested, which is already going through that separate process as to what we're talking about, and being opened greater for public asset. Community groups, historical organisations and veteran organisations have all expressed interest, in which we've heard, in maintaining a presence and connection to that site. The City of Launceston, I'm not fully aware of what scope is being explored around sale or potential opportunity or expressions of interest. I know that we have on several occasions expressed interest on a councillor level and through resolution that we would be interested in looking at taking ownership of that site and containing that around community engagement, community asset, opposed to opportunities for the private market. And I can't speak to you today on what information you might have to that beyond what we have. We haven't had further engagement to that expression. We've talked about and heard Youngtown as an opportunity there, and again, council supports defence maintaining fit for purpose facilities to meet contemporary operational and training requirements. Having been in the conversation at the RSL in which we were briefed on, I think what's been noted here today is important to recognise the distance travelled. A distance to be travelled on the mainland might be very different to the expectations that are required for that hour and a half to Burnie from Launceston. It's not something that our community, rightly or wrongly, is so much used to doing. Commuting to work in the City of Launceston is basically 15 minutes beside each side of the city into the centre. So I do respectfully understand conversations and comments that are made that might go beyond what's our community as a state and as a community of Launceston might see as appropriate, particularly those volunteering. We have a cooler climate, and going through, as we know, around our country, there are restraints that might come into play around what that looks like to drive an hour and a half per se to Burnie. So we know that Youngtown, it remains an important defence presence in northern Tasmania there as well. There is a strong community support for defence retaining an active presence in the region here. And the committee should respectfully, in our view, encourage Defence to provide greater transparency around the timing and sequencing of estate decisions, particularly where one site's future, as Senator Lambie was talking about, the upgrades depend on elsewhere, and what that looks like, being transparent around that, because we know that the community, it needs certainty. The future of, as we've mentioned, Patterson Street Barracks, the future of Youngtown, and the future of defence community facilities in northern Tasmania, they're all interconnected. Clear timeframes and clear communications would assist in that greatly. One of the strongest themes for the City of Launceston we'd wish to emphasise is that heritage significance of the defence sites. We've heard around those that have direct impact and direct correlation and relationship with the defence. And we sit here again to talk a little more alongside the connection to community and how defence assets, they really do open up and offer a place that represents a place of memory, a place of service, not simply just infrastructure. Veterans serving personnel and families maintaining a strong emotional and historical connection with these places. Again, that doesn't go beyond the remit of what is felt to be appropriate or oversupply. We're here more so to talk about the community engagement, the community sentiment, and how local government and council is looking to continue that connection there as well. So further disposal framework should also, in our respectful view, include enhanced consideration of that military heritage and local community histories and that story that they are continuing to tell. Local government can be really effective in partnership, particularly in helping preserve the active assets and how they remain active. The value of places such as Patterson Street Barracks can't be measured solely by land value or development yield, and that's where the City of Launceston sees such incredible significance to these locations and to these assets, and these places embody service, sacrifice, and again, that community memory. If I may be bold to respectfully share some recommendations that we might respectfully view is to prioritise public benefit outcomes before open market disposal of surplus defence assets, require Defence to provide greater transparency and certainty around estate planning decisions that affect regional communities, again talking about the distance travelled and so forth, and establish a formal pathway that enables local government, veterans organisations, community groups to partner with the Commonwealth on the future ownership or management of heritage defence sites. If I may just close, Launceston is really proud of its defence history, and we've heard about the contributions and the number, the yield that comes per capita from Launceston and from Tasmania. We understand how it continues to support defence futures and their role in northern Tasmania. And we respectfully submit that the future of assets such as Patterson Street, which we know is not directly being divested as part of this conversation, but it is part of the broader conversation, should be guided by public value, heritage preservation and community benefit. And we believe that there really is an opportunity, if not an opportunity missed, for the Commonwealth to demonstrate a best practice approach, not only to consultation, but to defence estate management here in Launceston, and one that really does balance the operational needs with the long-term investment in our community.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Appreciate your opening submission. I'm just going to kick off with a few questions and then pass on to my colleagues. Can you just, for the benefit of the committee, just talk a little bit more about the Launceston City Council deal, the 2017 one, the council's role in the site now and perhaps in the planning processes, and also you mentioned that you can't talk about anything that's other than that's on the public record in terms of the engagements, but I guess any private sector engagements that have, or discussions that have been held around the potential sale of that site.
Thank you.
Do you hold my...
Yeah,
Not sure
please.
You weren't mayor back then.
No.
You
No.
you sort of got some sort of idea what was going on?
Yes.
Go for it.
Yes, well, the city deal is one of, if not the only, sort of shining light from that initiative of the government at the time. $650 million was invested into our local community, which was a part of this conversation in which the university in Newnham campus, where you visited today with AMC as a part of that, that university has been relocated into the CBD, into the city. It created an incredible opportunity for our city to be invigorated and the vibrancy of our city around that. And part of that conversation was obviously AMC being an opportunity for further defence opportunities and Patterson Street Barracks being a part of that conversation too. It delivered other more social and economical opportunities, but it is essentially now opening up that opportunity for that Newnham campus to be redeveloped, in which you've seen potentially just an excavator out there for your arrival, perhaps. I'm not sure as to where that development actually is going at the moment.
We did wonder, Mr Mayor.
And the golden shovels out there for your arrival,
Well,
perhaps.
they've got the pretty vehicles there, so something's going on, surely.
But I'll speak very positively around
Not as pretty as yours.
That's right.
what's been delivered is absolutely fantastic as a part of the city deal, and the opportunities for what Newnham campus is going to bring and what we'll bring for our northern suburbs, which is a lower socio-economic part of our city. And looking at what that opens up for Patterson Street Barracks. And as I said, it wasn't so much commercial in confidence by any means, but it's more around, I don't know what's going on with the site there at Patterson Street Barracks. And that's why we're putting such an emphasis on the consultation around, because it is a highly valued spot, and I know that that would be a great development for a private developer. And I know that there are some that would be very, very interested in that. But the City of Launceston has, again, been bold in going forward through resolution, through council, and through our processes that we have through the Act to say that we would be very interested in taking carriage of this building, maintaining its heritage, and ensuring that it continues to contribute to the community opposed to private enterprise.
Okay. And that doesn't happen until they've moved out. Are you waiting for them to move out?
Well, we don't have carriage at all over where this is sitting at the moment.
No,
It's
but
been divested prior
the
to
trigger for
it.
the next stage. So, you know, this has been since 2017 that you started these discussions. So
Yes.
you're just sort of waiting for forced to move out to the next site, wherever it might be.
Sure. Well, I wouldn't like to use the word to see them forced out by any means, because we're in no rush. We are absolutely there to continue to make sure that this is a community asset, whether that's a community asset with the defence, whether that's a different purpose for the use. I just don't have clarity in where it's now sitting after the divestment as to who has carriage of that, whether it's now been put forward to the state government, whether it's still sitting in the defence assets. All I can attest to is that we've put the expression of interest out there, and it's going through a process that I don't have any further information as to how I can step in and help that asset into its next stage of life, whatever that may be.
And who decides on the zoning of the site?
Sure. Well, we have carriage through the Planning Authority around zoning, but we can only change what we can change through the state government's planning scheme.
Okay.
And just ensuring that what we can put forward planning scheme amendments, we can put through zoning amendments, but ultimately who is in charge of that is the state government planning authority.
Okay. Final question from me before I'll quickly pass it on. But you mentioned before about the community connections. I thought that was a really powerful part of your submission, and community expectations. Can you just very quickly talk about the impact on the Launceston youth should, you know, the cadet program be impacted here?
Sure. Well, I'd be so strong in saying we're seeing not just in antisocial behaviour, but in disengagement of our youth right across the country, maybe if not globally. It is a pandemic that we are finding, and we heard speakers talk about it before, that the schooling system is not resonating with everybody. I don't know if it ever has catered to every single person, but when you're looking at disciplinary opportunities like going and working and learning in the defence sector as a cadet, and we're finding volunteering sectors are really struggling for numbers, whether they're through service groups. It's really difficult to see how we're finding engagement. We're taking a very soft approach, and we've got soft parenting, and I've got a 10-week-old and a 3-year-old, and soft parenting is not easy. I didn't grow up with soft parenting, and I think I came out okay. But we're looking at different ways of really engaging our young people, and if we're not, if discipline isn't a real part of that upbringing, isn't a part of our community anymore, then where are we finding the engagement for some? And we're seeing some stricter laws in Queensland with adult crime and adult time. I'm not saying that's reflected everywhere, and I'm not saying that's viewed highly everywhere. That's just an example of what's going on. But when you look at some other nations around, when you look at other countries around compulsory service, there are some real distinctive opportunities in which you're seeing engagement. And what that looks like around respect and where we're finding ourselves in social situations, local government. I don't want to go on a tangent, but we're finding that rates, roads and rubbish is absolutely out the window. We have got further and further pressures from our community around antisocial behaviour, around cost of living, around homelessness and housing, where we're working in a sector that was never set up to deal with these social impacts. But because we're the closest level of government to the community, we're finding pressures. I've got council meetings where people can come and air their wares, and that responsibility is starting to really find its way further into local government. So that's where we're looking at opportunities to continue to work with the Defence Forces and continue to work with engagement and how we can use the resources that we do have, although stretched. And we see Defence as a huge part of that relationship with community and with council, and finding opportunities for youth to find their place, to find their place, to find their people. Their people might be in a sporting club, they might be in a theatre environment, or they might be working and learning through the Defence Force. I resonate with what the speakers were saying before. If you've got Defence Forces in which you don't have appropriate land holdings where you can fire a weapon, or at least carry a weapon, or really learn what that is, and that won't be, some people will just want to serve, some people will have that idea of, I really want to have a look at what being in the armed forces is all about. It's very difficult to see how that continues to attract and retain young candidates, or even those more mature. So yeah, we really do see, for one, it's almost literally across the road from Town Hall, but we love seeing our Anzac Day parades. We love doing our Anzac Day services and our memorial services, and the school children that are getting further and further involved, and seeing the thousands of people coming to our cenotaphs across Tasmania and Australia. But yeah, if we start to lose that actual engagement of where can I go next to actually explore this further, I think that having a presence and detracting that by having to travel an hour and a half, again, which isn't in our culture. We get disappointed with a 5-minute traffic jam, let alone those that might travel on the mainland 2 hours to go to work or school. So I think it's a really important part of our culture here in Tasmania. It doesn't say that culture can't change. It doesn't say that we can't do more about it, but you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'll pass you across to the call across to Senator Lambie.
Yes, thank you. So, can you just what's left over that side of Newman? Is it just the AMC? Is the university using? Are all those most of those buildings empty? Are they? Just take me through it.
Yeah, I'm on the assumption that, again, it didn't come in quite in my time, having only been 3 years in the role.
Yeah.
But it is my understanding that it is a relocation of services outside of that to open up that for development, whether it's housing, further defence, AMC. I'm on the understanding that, yeah, they should be moving out, and there should be capacity, that anything that doesn't have to be there, like with AMC, should be coming into the city.
Okay, that's how I understand it. So there's quite a bit of capacity over there. I mean, those buildings and that, there's quite the buildings and that over there.
Yes. There's a few others that have taken some initiatives in there. I know there's a new school, MSA, which is a national body, have taken one of the buildings there, Building A, when you come in off the main road. So I'm not sure, not having carriage of the project, what the activation of those assets is predominantly for. I've seen plans and I've seen ideas around agriculture to develop on the rugby field and so forth, but it's a bit beyond local government as to where that is sitting. But yes, it's developed in a way as well where it is quite confined. Yeah. That layout of that precinct. So it's not big open plan, it's buildings. So
yeah, I'm just wondering how many of those are viable and how many not, because I don't see why they can't put Army Reserve and all that over in one place. That's why I'm asking. Yeah. I'm assuming we're not getting a shooting range there, because what is your thoughts on what's the name, Head? Sorry, what's it called? Stony Head.
Stony Head, yeah.
Yeah. What's your take on that? I know that's not really in your area, but it would affect Launceston. I mean, we have had big military movements down here in the past and used that as a training ground. Obviously, accommodation, basing it from Launceston and all the rest, because some of the facilities are here and collecting from here before we head to Stony Head. Do you have any observation or any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, going to what Peter was mentioning, I wasn't a part of the conversation of Launceston having an armoury and so forth, so I can't speak to where that has been in the past and going forward. But having gone to the conversation with the Assistant Minister at the RSL and speaking about looking at those assets and then potentially leasing them back and those sorts of conversations, a little further beyond my pay grade. But I think from the City Council point of view, it is more about ensuring that we maintain and retain what is working and not just looking at what these assets are and diversing them, but really looking at continuing to have an opportunity for what the purposes of them are for. Consolidation for the consolidation point is just not art for art's sake, you know. Like, if these are working, they're working well. I'm sure that there are many other examples around the country that could be repurposed, but we've got to be really clear from our local government sectors that what's working, what's already zoned. Like, why would you create a problem when there's already opportunity for it to be working well? So I don't have a significant amount of impact around Stoney as an example, but I don't see any combativeness from the City of Launceston as to why that wouldn't retain what's working well.
And does the City of Launceston have any idea of how many public schools in its area have put up to house cadets?
No, I'm not across that. Being schools being controlled by the state, I don't have those figures. I'd be very interested.
Yeah, me too.
And
I can't get them anywhere else.
Yeah, I'd love to look at what initiatives we could help put in place to assist those, particularly in our northern suburbs where Newnham campus is. We do lots of activations in schools. Again, we probably go a little out of our remit, but we understand the value of that community engagement, particularly in schools.
Okay, but you haven't been asked to engage as a City Council to see if you can get a sniff out there with the public schools? I'm just trying to work out who's doing all those.
Yeah, not directly related to defence that I'm aware of.
Okay.
It's come across the council table.
Thank you, Mayor. Wonderful, thank you, as always. Nice to see you.
Me too.
Thank you very much for your time today and your contribution. We very much appreciate it. I don't believe there are any questions on notice, but if so, please return them by 4th of September. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I now invite to the table Colonel Ross Byrne, and on teleconference will be joining us Lieutenant Colonel Philip Pryke. And I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to the Senate committees has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, would you please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear today, and we'll begin with Colonel Byrne.
My name's Colonel Ross Byrne, retired. I appear on my own behalf, although I'm a good Tasmanian and carry a number of hats around the state, including being part of the RSL and a number of other clubs. I have commanded every unit that is looking to be disposed of in this state, apart from the cadet units. I've either commanded it or been part of that unit. I'll stop.
Thank you very much. And Lieutenant Colonel Pryke, would you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear today?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Philip John Pike, and I appear in an individual capacity.
Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel, we'll begin with you. Would you like to make a short opening statement?
Yes, I would, and it's great to have this opportunity today. And I'm noting that the saying from Paul Keating that defence hold them, their bases, not as operating assets, they've long fallen out of military use, but holds them in virtual trust on behalf of the nation. That, in the operational sense, is they don't belong to defence to do anything with, including their sale. And I often wonder how Paul Keating gets that, but the current government doesn't. By way of background, I've served with the Australian Army for 34 years, both part-time, full-time, and my family, including my stepson and my daughter, have served this nation across every generation since 1840. I've got operational service where everyone else has been across the last 25 years, and I served with the 1240th Battalion as a private soldier, as an NCO, and a privilege of coming back as an officer. Since retiring from Army in 2023, I focused on studying disinformation, cognitive warfare, and applying this into the civilian context. I indicate, like the RSL has stated, I do not oppose the divestment of defence properties when it's done in a collaborative, non-authoritarian manner. I support RSL Tasmania's position, but I'm not as kind to the federal government's approach as the RSL is. Downgrading Tasmania, yet again with defence, isn't appropriate. And since 1994, we've had defence here by cuts here by 1,000 cuts, all justified at the time, but collectively
Lieutenant
overall.
Colonel, my sincere apologies for interrupting. I'm just wondering if you are speaking on speaker.
Yes, I am.
Would you mind try and just having the phone against your ear? It might just make it a little bit clearer for us at this end.
How's that?
Yes, that's much better. Yes. Thank you very much. Off you go.
Yeah, so as I said, I support what the RSL are saying, and I support the position, but I'm probably not as kind to the federal government's approach as the RSL is. Look, since 94, we've had death by 1,000 cuts down here in Tasmania. All those decisions justified at the time, but collectively they've been failures. Senator Collins, you asked about the contribution of defence of Tasmania to Australia's national defence. Now, to define this, I want to tell you that this state is a potential front line in future conflict. And I wish to tell you this by highlighting an incident that occurred 9 days ago. Tuesday, the 18th of August, a US Air Force C-17 Globemaster took off from Christchurch Airport, bound for Phoenix Airfield, the ice runway serving McMurdo Sound in the Antarctica, as part of the resupply operations for the US Antarctic program. Around 2.5 hours into that flight, the aircraft turned and returned to Christchurch. The US Federal Air Administration NOTAM, that's a notice to airmen or mariners, was issued covering the Australian and Indian Ocean, flagging Russian aerospace activities beginning August 14 with possible debris warnings, suggesting a tie to a broader pre-announced Russian space and missile activity window. What's interesting here is that this NOTAM covered 30 million square kilometres of the Auckland Oceanic Flight Information Region with no confirmed launch, and basically fitted a grey zone hybrid warfare action rather than any genuine launch or test. And so the aircraft turned back on their own decision because of safety. And this is occurring now. This hybrid grey zone warfare is occurring in the same ocean and the Antarctic, and this will no doubt increase with the Antarctic Treaty up for renegotiation in 2030. It's noted that, that down here in Hobart, China and Russia increasingly coordinate their veto positions at the Commission for Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources right here in Hobart. And so because these are really creating a broader diplomatic and geopolitical stalemate over future governance and environmental protections of Antarctic. They want to mine down there, they want to do a whole number of things, and the grey zone tactics are already being used here. But of course, we're looking at the north. We are looking at Indo-Pacific. And it isn't enough that to state that increasing southern pressures can, in the Antarctic and Southern Ocean, can be managed from fleet bases east or west. But as we know, there's increasing political pressures through CAMLAR, and we are actually the front line to the south. And Tasmania is constantly overlooked in this regard. You know, coming back to the divestment, there's indications that the Australian Army supplied government a list of around 100 properties that it was prepared to divest. Government is reported to dismiss this list and created their own. I asked for this committee to have this information clarified because it's indicative of government planning a fire sale and not having a real plan. I look at the issue with Victoria Barracks in Sydney, where I've been posted, and as a spiritual home of Army, disposing of this barracks is insulting to every former and current serving member of Army. This would actually be akin to selling Old Parliament House and the Museum of Democracy, because the role of Prime Minister and Cabinet is really not to manage heritage sites. Assistant Minister Khalil said there would be more investment in Tasmania and across the mainland with defence industry. This week, my daughter was announced as the 2026 female founder under the Westpac Awards and the 2025 Prime Minister's Veteran Entrepreneur with a range of women's operational undergarments. I can advise the government's policies around capital gains tax has created much uncertainty in innovation and sovereign capability. Small companies are now looking to move offshore because there is no venture capital coming or limited venture capital coming into this country to assist those small sovereign capabilities to expand to the next level. What I really want to look at is connecting the three failures that I see here. And one is obviously we can't fit everything into defence, and RSL have spoken about that. The systematic degradation of our defence capability here over 3 decades, the emerging strategic threat to our southern approaches, which demands more investment, not less. And I want you to understand that the downgrading of our bases here is inconsistent with the long-term AUKUS estate requirements. And AUKUS is more than just submarines. And so with the Stony Head and Buckland Military Training Area, this is obviously the absence of a live firing capability, but across the states, and RSL Peter Williams might be able to clarify this later, I believe it's the only aerial delivered capable range in the south of the country. Stony Head is the only non-barrier reef, open water, amphibious lodgement littoral training area, so south of Queensland, and can provide the training for sea states over 3 to 4. Because of the barrier reef being there, sea states rarely get up to sea state 3. These areas aren't utilised because the entire strategic focus is to the north. However, these sites offer the opportunities to train, as well as develop, test and develop new open water amphibious capabilities away from the hindrance of electronic monitoring, as recently highlighted with creeks planning areas on the mainland. So in closing, I'm just asking, where is the plan? And it's not enough for the government to simply run around and suddenly come up and go, surprise, we're giving this away. Australia must be the only Western democracy in the current strategic environment decreasing the threat of military capabilities, particularly in these dire circumstances. I'm going to ask this of Assistant Minister Khalil, Defence Minister Richard Marles, Secretary Peter West, and the Tasmanian Labor members. Stop treating us as if we're stupid. Having no plan and trying to push deals behind the backs of stakeholders is just pure Canberra arrogance. We've been here before, long before most of the members were elected, but we know this space and we know we're being treated poorly. The lack of engagement on the care disposal is beyond comprehension. This is about a government and bureaucracy not understanding what military service needs to this nation and why these sites are firstly relevant and secondly meaningful to the military community. If Paul Keating understood this, why can't our current government?
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel. Appreciate your opening submission. I'll now pass to Colonel Byrne.
Thank you very much. Look, I didn't expand on my CV and where I come from, but you have 2 papers in front of you. The first one was written in March 2026 when the plan first came out. You'll see right at the back that the number of units and facilities that I've commanded in this state. But my career was basically, I commanded 40th Independent Rifle Company out of Hobart, the 12th 40th Battalion. I was part of the people that raised the battalion across the state. I've been the Deputy Commandant of the Army Command and Staff College at Queenscliff, and I understand you had a spirited discussion there recently. And I was given the job of disposing of that facility in the year 2000. And I can still remember the state government said, not in a pink fit are we going to take it over. And it's still there and it's on this list now. And I ended up as the Chief Staff Officer to the Assistant Chief of the Defence Force Reserves in Canberra, and following that I did a project called Army in the 21st Century. I'm a chartered accountant by training and an economist, and was given the project to cost the Army in 2005. So that's my background. But whilst I address my paper from a Tasmanian viewpoint, my comments on capability apply equally across Australia, particularly in regional Australia. I've served and had exercises and dealt with many units right across the country, from the north of Queensland with the Far North Queensland Regiment, Norforce in the Northern Territory, out in the plains of Victoria and New South Wales, and right throughout South Australia. The backbone of the defence, recruiting, etc., has been regional Australia, and we're giving this up. We're giving this up. There are many questions about the logic of this plan and whether it is a plan of a greater plan to totally downsize in Tasmania. Is the plan to let Tasmania wither on the vine, pour recruits to 1240 and to 8 OSU, so they are no longer viable? Then they've got a reason to close the whole thing down. Is the concept of the citizen soldier no more in Tasmania? Because that's what I see this plan. I've been on the record a number of times saying that Defence and the current Labor government has abandoned Tasmania. I've not changed my views since the consultation process. These disposals go ahead without effective capability retention, then within 5 years there will be a very few boots on the ground left in Tasmania. Army Reserve Form units will cease to exist. My biggest concern has been the way the infrastructure disposals have been handled. We've been told by Defence on a number of occasions this is being handled by Finance, who will dispose of the properties, and Defence has simply been given the job of making this work. The lack of consultation, and you've had the RSL and others talk, has been appalling. The lack of consultation has been appalling. I have attended 3 consultation meetings in which the Assistant Minister for Defence on 2 occasions addressed those present. They were not consultation sessions. They were simply sessions where those attending were told what was happening, of which, in a number of areas, the Minister and his staff did not have any idea of what was to happen. Indeed, as recent as last week at a consultation in Hobart, the session in Hobart was finally told that, after being heavily pressed, and I mean there were some pretty angry people in the room, that they did not have a plan for what was to happen in Tasmania. They don't have a plan, other than the disposals and vague generalisations of returning capability. And it's quite clear that those Defence attending had little understanding of what Defence capability really is. I'll talk about capability in a minute, but at this consultation session, I said to the First Assistant Secretary and a few of his staff after the meeting, I said, where is everyone going from Durham Barracks? And they said, oh, we're going to go to Anglesey Barracks. I said, oh, that's great. Did you go up there today? He said, yep. So how'd you get up there? He said, I had went up by taxi, but some of the people had the car. And I said, where'd you park your car? He said, oh, there's nowhere to park. And I said, you want to put 3 times more vehicles in that barracks and you want to transfer people up there? They have no idea. Peter Williams mentioned how when they did the consultation up here, they talked about Youngtown Barracks and they didn't know where it was. He said, come over to the window and I'll show you. They did not understand, and that's happening right across the board. I want to just talk a little bit on capability, but I think the RSL mentioned it pretty well. The National Defence Strategy and Defence Strategic Review recognises that Australia's future security will depend on a larger, more integrated and more resilient Australian Defence Force, so supported by a whole-of-nation approach to capability generation. And I get the Minister and I get others say, oh, we're going to retain capability. When you ask them what that means, they can't tell you. Capability will increasingly depend on a Defence's ability to recruit, educate, train, sustain and mobilise a highly skilled workforce. Every time we sell off a depot, and we've done it here in Tasmania and in Western Victoria and New South Wales, we lose soldiers and they never come back. I had my backside kicked as a CO because they closed 2 of my depots. And 3 months later, I got told, why are you 50 soldiers down? Because you bloody closed the depots and they went somewhere else. Sorry, I've said I won't get excited. So what's capability, recruit, etc.? We've got supported by industry. We've got some really smart industry in this place. And Admiral Gilmore, who's speaking after me, is more capable of speaking of that than me. We've got to have resilient communities. And you've got it in the paper what happened pre-Second World War with the 2nd 40th Battalion got captured on Timor. They were captured on Timor and ended up in prisoner of war camps. Why? Because Defence did not invest in Tasmania pre-Second World War, and we had people who were recruited and within 6 months were in the front line trying to defend Australia. We had 2 soldiers documented in the 40th Battalion history that fired their rifle. They only got issued it a month before. They fired their rifle for the first time when the Japs were coming down the road. We are looking at that here now. And the other thing is we need enduring partnerships between defence, government, education providers and the private sector. We have some really good stuff here in this state. The Maritime College, the University of Tasmania. But the key thing is about that retention. Look, I support the Australian Government's commitment to modernising Australia's defence capability and recognise that the defence infrastructure must continue to evolve to meet future operational requirements. I have no problems with selling off some of these things. You know, I've never been inside Maribyrnong, but driving past it was enough. Why do you keep that? Real issue is, why didn't Defence get rid of it years ago? And I suppose the key message here I want to get across is infrastructure should be viewed as an enabler of capability rather than an objective in itself. The measure of success should not be the number of facilities retained or divested, but what Defence is better positioned to generate and sustain the force required for Australia's future capabilities and security. Australia's future defence capability will depend less on the number of facilities it owns and more its ability to recruit, educate, train, sustain and mobilise in the event that it's required. If you close all these depots down and you concentrate all your defence forces and you recruit out of Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, you're going to get people that don't have the skills. I had a battalion that had, I never had to teach anyone how to use a chainsaw or a backhoe or anything like that in my reserve battalion. They did that every day. Whereas now we have to train people, it takes months. It's capability and depth of capability. I was going to talk about cadets, but I'll leave that to 2 people who are speaking after me. And particularly, I just want to make the point. At one stage I was CEO of St John Ambulance Australia in Tasmania. And we had a youth movement that died. Yeah, St John Ambulance is all about first aid. Defence is all about defence. But we made the decision to spend a lot of money on the youth program around Australia because where else, and the Mayor talked about it beautifully, about where else does he get depth in his community if there's not people like Defence, St John Ambulance, PCYC Scouts, etc., that are developing our youth. And particularly on the northwest coast of this state, where we've got these naval cadets, they had a great depth to people. And I think John Hardy did it well about going to schools. Why aren't we in schools now? Because it doesn't work. It never did work. If you think you're going to go into schools here in Tasmania, where are you going to get the money to do that? The schools haven't got it. We talked about where do we get people from. We've got 2 3-star generals from Tasmania who are currently in the Defence Force. One of them hopefully will go to the top. And I think it's probably best if I stay there, except just in summary, I see this as an exercise in money grabbing by finance. I've seen them do this before. Brighton Army Camp was, we're going to make millions. I acted for the guy that bought it. $118,000 he paid for it. He got that money back within about 3 months by selling off all the huts, and he then had about 30 acres which was already set up for a subdivision. We smile at each other when we see in the street about how much he made out of that. I was at, opened up Durham Barracks and the development back in the mid-90s. I refused to leave Beaumaris House, where my headquarters was, until I could see where my desk would be put when my soldiers turned up in Durham Barracks. And they kept saying, oh, we'll put you in temporary accommodation. Well, I know how defence works. We'd still be in that temporary accommodation. I stood my ground, nearly lost my command, but I didn't move until we had our 4 buildings built. I don't think there's been much thought gone into this defence capability in Tasmania. If there is a plan that they want to get out of Tasmania altogether, say that. The consultation process on last week, I looked around and I said, I don't know anyone in this room. And I realised it was said, this is about Durham Barracks. So I went and introduced myself to a lot of people. And what they were the public servants, the mums and dads who work there. And when I asked them, why are you here? They said, well, if I'm going to have a job, where are we going to move to? Do I have to sell my house? The people talking didn't know where people were. And he said at one stage, there are 2 multi-user depots in Launceston. I thought, hang on, we're only talking about this little block of land out at the university. And he said, oh, the other one's at Devonport. And people started laughing and he couldn't understand why. You know, get a map. People, I stand by my comment. Defence and the Labor government have abandoned Tasmania. There is no real plan as to what Defence will do. They have not identified any new locations for new facilities and cannot answer any effective questions about what they will do. If the disposal of these 15 defence facilities happened, leaving only 2 in the state, if that occurs, I predict that within 5 years, the Army Reserve Form units in Tasmania will cease to exist. Defence cadets will probably struggle on with the limited numbers. Recruiting from Tasmania for defence will dwindle significantly. The community will suffer from a lack of depth in training of its youth and younger members in leadership, resilience and general Australian esprit de corps. We'll leave our southern approaches and oceans open to exploitation. But what I've said about Tasmania equally applies to all the regional areas in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. I've been a CO of the 12th 40th Battalion. Every commander that's ever been in the 40th Battalion has been told, remember the 2nd 40th on Timor and never, never, never let it happen again. If this happens, we're about to repeat history. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel. I just want to thank you both for your very substantive submissions and your statements today. Extremely helpful, very significant contributions, and you know, a lot has gone into those, so I want to thank you very much for that. It's very helpful for us. I'm going to pass the call to Senator Lambie to start with the questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Byrne, I want to go into your the 21st Century project. That was
the A21
yours?
project was costing the Army. It was at a time when the defence process was, we're going to move everything south. Part of that costing was what's it going to cost to develop Edinburgh base to take many units and to move out of Darwin and to move out of a lot of people out of Townsville. Why were they doing that? Simply, soldiers don't want to serve in Darwin. The young blokes like it up there, but the married people hate it. Why? Because if you're serving in Victoria or you're serving in New South Wales or Queensland, you can probably jump in the car for a weekend and go and see mum and dad. It may take you 3 or 4 hours, but at least you can do it. You can't do that from Darwin. You can't do that from Townsville. And I don't think much has changed. Now, A21, a project which was very interesting. My opening comments to the Vice Chief of the Army when he asked me to do it, I said, why are you getting me to do this? Where's all the public servants and finance people you got within Defence? Why can't they do it? I never really got an answer, but it became blatantly clear that when you get down to real costs, they weren't on top of it. And in the end, I was told it was supposed to be cost neutral, and I came in at just under $1 billion. Now that's 25 years ago, 20 years ago.
Okay, so that was done. So that was done in the early 2000s, was it?
Yeah, about 2004 or 5.
Okay, and that was done on. We just can't find that anywhere. I mean, obviously you would have a copy, but obviously Defence is.
Well, what happened was
Oh, okay.
about 3 to 4 weeks after I put that report in.
Yes.
I'm not sure, but it was either the head of Army or head of Defence came out and said, we're going to restructure A21, and they took all the expensive bits out, did the bits that sort of came in weren't too expensive, and my understanding of just watching it over the next 5 years, they did all the little bits, except a couple of them, as separate projects.
So what little bits, considering they've been concentrating on the north since East Timor, that was a bit of a wake-up call, and then we're in the Middle East and they're realising that we need... I understand the isolation. I was up in Darwin for 2 years. That's just the way it is. You serve in uniform, you go suck it up. I have no problem with that personally. You obviously do. I do not.
Oh, no, I don't. I don't.
Okay, you don't know. I don't have a problem with it either. That's just the way the military service is. That's the way it is. And besides, all the training ground up there is phenomenal, just quietly. If you're going to survive Darwin, you're probably going to survive anywhere else. And then that obviously changed. That flipped very quickly. It's like everyone get up the north, everyone get up the north, everyone get up the north, because that's where they're coming. I mean, we've now seen, Chinese warships down over here opposite Tasmania. I actually thought they were coming to visit me, but obviously not. They were on the wrong side. And then, of course, we've got Antarctica, which is becoming a problem with its minerals and that down there as well. This really blows me away that we're not. They're just thinking we're isolated down here in Tasmania. They're never going to need to be stationed out of here. They're never going to need to be able to do the troops training down here and get them ready for that sort of changeover. It's fine. You can get training. I'm not sure if they know training very different in the heater weather to what it is in the colder weather, no matter what uniform you're in.
Look, in 2030, the Australian Antarctic Treaty, I think it's 2030, comes up for renewal.
Yeah.
We've already had, as you just mentioned, Chinese through. I've been to every base where you can access the Antarctic, and I've been to the Antarctic. And no Chinese ships, you've mentioned them, here in Hobart. There was none in Christchurch. There was in Punta Arenas, there was in Ushuaia, and there wasn't in, where's the other one? Oh, Cape Town. There was in Cape Town. I was there 12 months ago. Yeah. Chinese ships. Now, they weren't defence ships, but they were there.
Right.
So here we are, and that's Phil's point. What are we doing with the Southern Ocean? I'm not sure I totally agree with him that we're the front line, but hey, that's where the issues seem to be coming. And we don't have a naval presence here. We've got a very small naval presence. Yeah. Same with the Air Force.
Yeah.
And if we get rid of the Army, we've got no military.
Yeah, we've got nothing down here. Okay. I don't think I have any further questions, to be honest, because I'm struggling to hear the Lieutenant Colonel Pike properly, so I might just organise a private briefing with him maybe myself. I'm really struggling to hear him. I can hear him, but it's real crackly. So I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lambie. I'll pass the call to Senator Bath.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your opening statement and for a very detailed submission. Very grateful for it. And I just want to pick up a little bit on where Senator Lambie was going in terms of the importance of Tasmania from a strategic perspective. When we do have the Antarctica just to the south, we've had Chinese ships circumnavigating Australia. If we remove all defence posture from somewhere like Tasmania, do you think that leaves us vulnerable? We can move all of our posture north. Do you think that's a wise decision for defence to take?
Oh, the wiser heads than me can answer that one, but it really comes back to the resources we've got.
Yeah.
The argument about spending money on AUKUS as against more ships, and I support the recent decision to buy not a naval person but frigates or whatever they're called out of Japan. That's excellent. But do we have that capability? Where do we need those? My son served in the Navy, and I can see the reason for why we need to be in Fremantle and Rockingham. I can see why we need to come out of Cairns and out of Sydney and out of Darwin. We don't have enough ships to come down and be stationed down here. But the longer term, are we opening our back door? And I think that's all I can say.
Yeah. Okay.
Could I just add in there?
Yes, certainly, please.
Is that anything that happens in the Antarctic and Southern Ocean would be correlated with things happening in the north. And so most of those assets that Ross was talking about will be focused in the north, which basically leaves the back door open.
Yep. And that's the challenge, I think, that we've got being in the strategic times that we are living in. There is a lot of uncertainty and it is dangerous. I think it's fair to say. In terms of, I guess, reservists and cadets, and you've spoken a little bit about sort of what all of this means for the community here in Tasmania. Do you think, and it sort of struck me, you made a comment that you believe that, we won't have any reservists and we will have very few cadets left if this goes as it's currently planned. What do you think could be done differently? So in terms of to preserve that ability to recruit reservists and to be able to have a very healthy cadet program, what would you say if you were in charge of this? What would you say should be done?
I'll do the reserve thing first.
Yes, certainly.
The sale of Defence Barracks, of Durham Barracks, just is nonsensical.
Yeah.
It's being sold for one reason: finance. Because it's where, bite me lip, where there's people out there that own stadiums nearby that would love the land to make commercials out of it. So sell them that land. But why sell everything? Why not leave the barracks where it is and sell the land around it? If you kept that, you keep the capability in Hobart, and you keep the ability to develop the reserve, because the reserve predominantly now has moved, when we had a number of barracks, and you can see them in my paper, to be centred on Durham Barracks. Now we're going to try and go up to Anglesey Barracks, which is just rubbish. It won't fit. And they say we're going to get some other land. Where? As part of my role in the RSL, we've been looking for land. We can't even find building sites. And John Hardy mentioned about the 4 or 5 sites we've got. They're talking about getting some. Have you been to Durham Barracks? The committee been to? No, you haven't. Youngtown 5 times over, 10 times over. And if you, there is no land in Hobart for that, and they're talking about buying land similar. It's not there.
Should have kept Brighton, shouldn't they? Should have kept all that land out of Brighton,
Don't get me
mate.
started, Senator.
Yep,
But,
there it is.
And
Told him not to
so
sell that off
these
either.
decisions come back to bite you in days gone
Yeah,
by.
that-
Here in Launceston, it is ludicrous to say that we're going to move everybody out to this small cadet block of land we've got out near the university.
Yeah.
I spoke to someone who thinks they're going to be posted out there that's not a cadet, and he said, we won't fit, let alone with the cadets there. And then they want to bring the infantry out there as well.
No, there's only cadets.
And I think someone mentioned about it'll be really great fun the day you drive the military vehicles with machine guns mounted through the university to see what reaction you get when you're out there. Not going to happen. In Hobart, if they do find land, it will be well out of the city, and it will be soldiers won't serve there. It's just too far out, and I think the Mayor covered that very well about the culture, I think. Up the northwest coast, why we're selling Kokoda Barracks, I don't understand.
You can have them.
And they say we're going to sell that to go and buy some land and build some more barracks. If you go there, it's a lovely barracks. You know, Youngtown, I used to command that. The back's been broken for years, and they had a landslip recently, and they're ready to fix it. And then someone decides they're going to sell it to take them to a small block of land. This is finance only. It's nothing to do with military capability. And when you go to cadets, cadets have always been, they got rid of many depots, particularly with the Navy over the years, and have put them into second-rate buildings. Will they go into schools? No, and John Hardy covered that quite well. But the other part of it is, it's not just go to the school for a classroom. They need place to, and I think Senator Lambie brought it up, where are they going to store all their equipment? Now, where are they going to put all their vehicles? They've got vehicles and things like this. So where are they going to do that? The schools at the moment can't even afford their own management and maintenance. How are they going to look after the cadets? And it's going to cost more. And particularly with the naval cadets, with their boats and things, they need access. And others will talk about that better than I can. But to answer your question, Senator, we go with this. What it will mean is people will no longer serve. There will no longer be a citizen soldier ethos in this state. And you will find that in west of the Blue Mountains and in Victoria and Queensland. Sorry, is that it?
That is very helpful, and I guess I only ask that it is a strategic priority of Defence to actually increase the number of reservists and increase the number of cadets. So I think this sort of plays into where we've got one policy wanting to do one thing, and then you've got another policy doing the exact opposite.
Yes, I think they've only.
Can I just add there, Senator, that Army cadets in Tasmania are absolutely amazing at flying drones. And we're developing that capability down here with the Army cadets. And you know, flying a drone is certainly something at my age that I could never do. You know, I've tried it, I've ended up in trees and lost and all that. But that is a capability that is needed for today's battlefield. Cyber is another area. Getting people in doesn't necessarily mean picking up a rifle, jumping in and out of vehicles, and doing the infantry minor tactics as much as Ross and I enjoyed them in our early days. So I think we've got to think more strategically in that space, that the cadets are actually bringing something to the party right here, right now. I can't speak for Navy or Air Force cadets, but I certainly can for Army cadets. And when you look at what Army cadets are doing right around Australia, they are bringing something really big to the table. They won't all join Army or the other services, but there is something there right now that is recognisable.
Senator Bligh, if I could just answer your question, which you did ask, which is about capability and what would I do? Across the state, retain Anglesey Barracks and retain Derwent Barracks, sell off the land either side. Retain the units there. Look, one of the things they've just done is spent $24 million on a workshop there to look after the vehicles. Yeah. And on last Thursday, we're told they're going to abandon that.
Sorry, can you just say that again, please?
At the consultation process last week, what they've done out of Derwent Barracks is in the last 2 years, they've spent, and they put the number on the table, $24 million on building a bespoke workshop out there. It's
at Derwent Barracks.
At Derwent Barracks.
That's been spent.
That's been spent. The workshops are happening, and they said we're going to abandon it when we leave. Now, Army Reserve units out there have been warned out to be ready to go by Christmas. Why? I've had a lot to do over the years as a developer, knowing that you'll take 3 to 5 years to get all these developments through council. So why are you moving them out now? To where?
No one's paying any attention, that's why they do it.
Yeah, I would retain Derwent Barracks. Yes, sell off the land either side. Happy to, I can understand that. Look, I'm not against getting rid of all these facilities that are not to scale. Yep. Here in Launceston, it is ludicrous to sell Youngtown to take everyone to a small block. Why would they sell that? They're already earmarked, as you heard, X million dollars to replace the building, which is broken. Now, they had a landslip and it's broken. But it's all the facilities under the sun. They'd already made a decision they needed other space for cadets and bought that block of land. Leave that. Kokoda Barracks, I don't understand why you would get rid of that. The Stony Head or Buckland, I'm beastly careless, but I can see the benefits in Stony Head, although we've invested huge money in Buckland, and I've already been approached by somebody who said, I'd love to buy Buckland, how do I buy it?
Chips.
Yeah, because they're all of the facilities that are out there. Fort Direction's a heritage place. We've got the ammunition down there. Why? Because we could. We could just as easily move it to Stony Head or somewhere like that. No problems with that going. The cadet facilities, don't have a problem with them getting rid of the old facilities as long as you can replace them. And, you know, the Senator, Minister Khalil said no one will be more than 15 kilometres away from their cadet depot. Well, you just laugh because they're bloody side further away now. And they just don't understand. They don't understand.
And am I correct in that there's no public transport in Tasmania? So
there is, but there isn't. Now, John Hardy mentioned that.
Yeah.
When I had the battalion this is 25 years ago, it's got a bit better.
Yeah.
One of the things of moving out there is you get a soldier from Warrane, which they ultimately closed that depot, Magic Depot. But what they did was, to get to parade out at Derwent Barracks was at least 2 and sometimes 3 buses.
Yeah, well,
Now that's all right at 6 o'clock when you knock off to be there by 7.
yeah.
But what happens when you knock off at 10 o'clock? You've got a half an hour of administration to do it, and you're half an hour, you're going to have a beer with your mates. You're 11 o'clock at night. There are no bloody buses then. And that's right across this state, and particularly in Hobart. Yeah. You move them down to Kingston, or you move them out the other side of Cambridge, or wherever else they're going to go, not going to happen. Yeah, sorry.
No, and that is helpful because it's also, you know, we've got fuel prices are at record highs, and there doesn't seem to be too much movement in the Middle East in terms of that settling down. So, you know, we have to take these things into account when we're asking people to join a reserve force, or we're getting parents to take their kids to cadets.
Senator, it's bigger than that though, because we're talking 17 to 20, 25-year-olds. A lot of them are students. A lot of them are apprentices. They don't have a car.
No. Yeah. And that is one of the challenges. So it seems nonsensical to make it harder for them to get involved and participate rather than easier. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blyth. Look, we've covered a lot of ground today. I'm just going to finish up with just 2 very quick questions. If you could, the $24 million upgrade at Derwent Barracks, what was that specifically upgrading?
Not upgrading. It was a brand new vehicle workshop over the last 2 years. Now, the $24 million was put on the table at the consultation last Thursday. Everyone thought it was about 14 to 15. Someone said from the committee that was there, or the group that was there, it was 24 million.
Okay. And how many vehicles are at Derwent Barracks?
What a great question. Look, I can't answer that. A bloody lot, I suppose, is the answer. But there's the battalion itself out there would have to, and 8 OSU. I'm just trying to picture the program out there. There'd be 30 to 40 military vehicles. You can't see them all.
Still got the help.
There'd be then and
Ambos.
Major Williams mentioned it. Sitting in a lot of big sheds out there are
big vehicles.
special purpose vehicles,
Special purpose.
police vehicles, others. And then, I don't know how many's on the site. There has to be close to 100 to 100 odd civilians that come and go on the site. They drive there. There's no buses outside the front gate. So you're talking a large number. They're not going to fit in Anglesey Barracks. Even someone told me that one of the military guys saying if we take all the battalion and the OSU vehicles and all the spare vehicles that they have out there with the pool vehicles, they simply will not fit in Anglesey Barracks. That's without the civilians.
Okay, thank you very much. And just a final question from me for both of you, and it can be a very quick answer should you choose to accept that. Do you think that this will make our Defence Force weaker?
Make it?
Weaker.
I've already said, if you go with the plan as it stands, we will cease to have a defence reserve capability in this state other than part-time people serving. You don't develop junior leaders without having to let them train, to let them be there. And you don't develop corporals and sergeants. in 12 months. Now, you go back to national service. Everyone that got called in, went to national service, they went as private soldiers. If we need to call people out, the depth comes from a reserve capability and a community leadership issue. It's do we have leaders in the community? And you don't develop young officers and, more importantly, the middle-ranking warrant officers and middle-ranking captains and majors to command these things overnight. It takes a long time.
Thank you very much, Colonel. Lieutenant Colonel, did you have anything further to add?
Yes, this is absolutely keeping us exposed strategically. This is, dare I say it, just Canberra-centric thinking, driven by finance, and given that we're constantly told that we face a dire strategic situation, I think this is actually quite mindless. This really is. This is not a reality of a nation, as we're constantly told, that is under threat. I believe there's a parliamentary committee being put together to define how the nation would step up on a war footing. So why are we talking about that and looking at this dire geopolitical situation and cutting bases?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to you both for your evidence today and taking the time out to appear as a witness.
Senator, if you figured out that I'm a bit passionate about this, I am, but I finish with a line that has been put out in newspapers and elsewhere. The decision to sell the barracks around Tasmania may make the next budget look marginally better, although I think you'll be lucky to break even, and that's an accountant speaking. But it will not make defence stronger, the public richer, or the nation wiser. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Colonel. Appreciate it. I don't believe you have any questions on notice, but if you do, could you please return them to the Secretariat by Friday, the 4th of September? Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening.
I now welcome Rear Admiral Steve Gilmore. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to Senate committees has been provided to you.
Yes.
For the Hansard record, would you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear today?
My name is retired Rear Admiral Steve Gilmore. I appear before you as a private citizen, albeit one that has extensive military service and most recently 8 years as the Tasmanian State Government's defence advocate working with industry in the state.
Thank you very much. And would you like to make a short opening statement today?
Thank you very much, Senator. Firstly, may I say good afternoon to you all, and thanks for everyone for travelling down to Tasmania, although I know Senator Lambie's home, so it is great to see you here. I should offer, if I may, at the start of my evidence, that I do appear as that private citizen, and that I therefore, as having retired from both the ADF as a reservist earlier this year and as the defence advocate, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Tasmanian Government nor the Department of Defence and the ADF.
Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you. It's refreshing to be able to speak.
We'll let you go loose now then. You've got none of that hold on you anymore. Excellent.
I'm speaking as me. Having said I retired from the Defence Advocate role about 12 months ago, I was in that role during the period that the audit or review was conducted, and therefore I'm certainly happy to take any questions in due course about that aspect of it, or the consultation or the lack of consultation. I understand that I was quoted by the Deputy Secretary at Senate estimates as the Tasmanian point of contact within government. If I suppose I was, if one Teams meeting where the terms of reference were relayed to me and the intent to come and visit Tasmania was discussed, that was the full extent of the consultation with the Tasmanian government, apparently.
Did that Teams meeting actually happen?
Yes, it did on the 23rd of September in
Which year?
23. Monday, I beg your pardon, the 30th of September, I correct that. And that was the two auditors, and they advised me and one of the state government public servants, as I said earlier, of the intent. We learned of the terms of reference and that there would be a visit to Tasmania. I think, if my recollection is correct, I indicated to them that my role as the defence industry advocate still kept me in touch with defence in general, and if I could help, I would obviously do so. No such help was sought. And that was the extent of the consultation. I'm not aware of anyone else within the Tasmanian government that had interaction with the auditors prior to or during.
We would know that, but the Tasmanian government doesn't want to show up. So that's where we're at with the Tasmanian government. Thank you. Just for all being honest in you.
So if I may continue with that opening statement, I provided advice earlier that I would like to, whilst I'm very happy to talk about things in general, and you can't stop me talking about strategy and the strategic aspect, should I say, of the Southern Ocean, and in fact I wrote the Tasmanian government input to the Defence Strategic Review, and in that I talked about the significance of the Southern Ocean as it relates to the defence of Australia, not at the detriment to the north and the west, which is vital, and the Pacific. I get all that. I was advocating a 360-degree look and force posture for the country, noting that whilst we refer often as the Southern Ocean as our backyard, it is backyards have back doors, and if I was wanting to do something nefarious with Australia, I'd position myself in the Southern Ocean or do polar orbits of space-based entities, but that's, I guess, for another day.
Sorry, I know this is your opening statement, but was that included in the DSR?
No. The word Southern Ocean appears once on page 47, I think it is, where there's a map of Australia which is skewed to the north and the west, and it has Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean and Southern Ocean. That is the only.
Much thoughts in that.
That's the only reference to the Southern Ocean.
It's on the map.
But I guess we're not here to criticise the DSR.
Why not?
I did advise the Secretariat that I would like to spend some time talking about the ANC in Tasmania, the Australian Naval Cadets. I beg your pardon. And that focus is based on my long experience with and knowledge of the Navy Cadet organisation, including being a cadet myself before I joined the Navy, so I know that is in prehistoric times. But
where did you do your training?
In Adelaide, Senator. I was at TAS Adelaide. But from a national command perspective, as Commander of the Navy Systems Command in 2007 to 9, one area of my responsibilities was the National Naval Cadet Organisation. So I had responsibility for ensuring its effectiveness, the safety of the cadets and the staff, and of course the facilities. So I got to know a fair bit about facilities around the country. And currently I'm the patron of Training Ship Derwent, which is located in Hobart, one of the 6 identified to be divested. And that's kept me very much in touch, and I guess contemporary in my understanding of Navy cadets in general, across the state more specifically, and obviously very focused on TS Derwent. So I proffer from what I've just said that I've got quite a reasonable understanding about what it is, what the cadets are, what they've achieved in the past, what they do now, what they strive to be, the policies underpinning them, and most importantly, as it relates to their facilities, the training curriculum, what it is we want to do with those young people that have joined the Naval Cadets. I guess my motivation to provide input to this inquiry, to speak to you today, is anchored to what appears to me to be a series of review recommendations relating to the Navy cadets in Tasmania, which includes, I think, a number of anomalies, certainly many misunderstandings, and apparently poorly informed judgments. I don't mean that as a criticism of the auditors themselves, but of the review. We talked about consultation. You know, there was no consultation, and not as it relates to cadets, that is for sure. I certainly question the basis underpinning the finding that all 6 Tasmanian ANC units have been recommended to be divested on completion of their current leases. All 6. Now, nationally, there are only 8 ANC units to be divested, and when you include Army, Navy and Air Force cadets, there's only 9 facilities to be. So 6 of the 9 are the totality of the Tasmanian Naval Cadet organisation. There's 220 leased cadet facilities in Australia, 220, and there's more that are owned or on site of the defence base, but 220 that are leased, and only 9 of those 220 are to be divested, and 6 of those are the Tasmanian Naval Cadet organisation. I might add that it's my understanding that few, if any, and I think it's the latter, of those 6 facilities were actually inspected by the auditors.
Can you say that again? Sorry, I couldn't quite hear.
It's my understanding, Senator, that few, if any, of those 6 facilities were actually inspected, i.e. people went in to look at the facility itself. Some had a drive-by, but I know for a fact that TAS Derwent, the only Navy cadet facility in the capital city of this state, was not inspected. There was a drive-by. I think they took a photo of the roof of the building, which you can see from the road, and thereby, how is it possible to judge the fit for purpose aspect of these facilities? It's simply not possible. And value for money, the proposition for value for money, there was no interaction with the ANC staff that I can find in this state. Not a single staff member was questioned about their unit and the capability that it had, nor the dollars that it was costing defence. One of those units, TS Argonaut in the town of St Helens on the northeast coast, charges defence $1 per annum, and they have never sought the $1. TS Derwent, my unit, charges $880, including GST, for the annual use of that facility, which is owned by the people of Hobart. It was purchased for £300 in 1963, I think it was, or 64, formerly being a rowing club, so ideally suited for waterborne activities. And it has been owned by those people. It is on Crown land. So I assert, therefore, that the recommendations relating to the divestment of Tasmanian cadet facilities was very poorly informed. It certainly lacked consistency when you look at it from a national perspective. Why everything in Tasmania? As in that role that I had where I was commanded or had responsibility for the whole of the Navy cadets from a national perspective, I visited many of those facilities. The 6 units we're talking about are certainly no less in overall fit for purpose nature, and in some cases I would judge better than the average. So I cannot see the rationale behind it. They simply did not understand, it would appear, that an ANC, a naval, sorry, I do keep using the term ANC, I hope that's okay. It requires to function, what it requires to function effectively and safely as a maritime-focused, community-based youth development and training organisation, which is what it is not a school classroom. It is a facility adapted to and capable of that role. So in closing, I've got to state my considerable surprise also as to why the cadet organisation nationally was even part of this review, a review which by definition, by the terms of reference, viewed all of the facilities that Defence use through the lens of its connection to the Defence Strategic Review and its fitness for purpose for the defence and national security of Australia. Cadets are not part of the ADF. They provide nothing to the directly to the defence of our country. How is it that you can judge facilities based against what you were told as the requirements of the review, i.e. what do they do in the to realise the very valid intent of the Defence Strategic Review, with the exception of the Southern Ocean? I don't contest the overall focus of the review. There are many places around Australia that could and should be divested. Some of them already have. They're padlocked up and nobody's using them. But as I said, cadets are not part of the ADF. They shouldn't be viewed as such. They provide considerable opportunities for Australians, and in this state, which last time I looked was part of Australia, enables skills development, leadership, training, a teamwork approach, mentoring and the feeling of inclusion, so often not included in other forms of community life. And I understand that about 30% of the Navy's cadets go on to join the ADF, which is a significant amount. Now, of the 70% that don't, they're better citizens for it, I would proffer. So basing of those units in school facilities just simply doesn't provide the maritime environment. Where does TS Derwent put all its boats if you can find a classroom that can take it? They're on the water. They have their own launching ramp. They have their own safety boats. They have staff trained in waterborne activities. They have accommodation there. They have a recently refitted galley. They have a boat simulation system there to train young people in how to drive boats safely and effectively. That is not going to fit, nor is it going to induce people to join the cadets. Someone said earlier on that kids spend all day in school. They don't want to go back to the classroom to learn about the Navy and maritime capabilities. I'm sorry I spoke for as long as I did. I contend, therefore, in closing, that, in my view, there's ample reason to reconsider those recommendations to divest the current 6 ANC units in Tasmania. Failure to do so will quite potentially lead to the total dismantling of the ANC organisation in this state and further distance communities that are already quite disgruntled by the lack of consultation and the recognition that they put so much into these community-based cadet entities. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you very much, Rear Admiral, for your submission today, and I'm sincerely sorry for what's going to be happening to the ANC in Tasmania, and especially that you're staying a part of it throughout your retirement. And I will ask just a couple of questions on that before passing to Senator Lambie. So, you don't see yourself and Derwent having, I can't read my writing, Derwent, from having a role after this. Like once they cancel the lease, how long is the lease for at the moment? When did you last sign that?
It varies across all of the units, of course. TS Derwent, the lease from memory is early in the new year. It is quite soon, Senator. I'm sorry, I do have the date. It's either at the end of this year or very early next year. I can guess. I think it's early in the new year. I can get the exact date if that helps. But it's the point, I guess, of your question, as I interpret it, is that what are they going to do? We've been told at the community consultation period that the Assistant Minister attended and 18 members of the Department of Defence supported him.
We've got no money.
They indicated, the Assistant Minister indicated that no unit will close, the facilities therein will be divested, and that they will move somewhere else, and like a school classroom or a community hall. I think they were, pretty close to the exact words. So we've had to relay that to the cadets and to the parents, more, as importantly, to the parents of the cadets and the community members that put a lot of their own time into maintaining and supporting the facilities and the training that is undertaken. And all we can say is the lease runs out in a few months' time, or some of them are a little bit later, at the end of next year. We've been told the unit won't close down, and we're going to go somewhere else. I think there is no plan.
No, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So, Derwent Barracks, there was project element 1 of Land 121 Phase 5B, right? And I just wish, I'm hoping you can confirm that this has actually happened, that there were there was investment into workshop bays, a 15-tonne gantry crane, vehicle maintenance bays, general engineering, a welding bay, working accommodation, meeting room, lunchroom, ablutions, general storage areas to meet the vehicle requirements for repair parts, tools, petroleum, oil and lubricants and hazardous materials, external fire tank and fire pump shelter, and other infrastructure services, $16 million, which was completed just last year.
Yeah, I can verify the $16 million and that it was completed last year. To each line of those many things you read out, I haven't seen personally, but I knew it was an extensive upgrade and is of some facilities, but the establishment of a number of new facilities which were based upon the provision of the Hawkeye vehicle to the 12th 40th Battalion, which is a new, relatively new vehicle being distributed across Army units nationally, both full-time and reserve. Yeah, so it was quite a media feature when the first of the Hawkeyes arrived and were bedded down in their new maintenance facilities, and those other things I just presume were added. I might add that at the community consultation period that I went to earlier this year with the Assistant Minister that I referred to earlier, this matter was raised, and he indicated that it was highly likely that that part of the base would be retained because Defence has just invested so much money into it. But that clearly would seem to have moved on as an ambition.
Would you not see, I guess, the link between investing tens of millions of dollars into a particular site is recognition of the fact that that site is strategically important to the Defence Force?
I believe so, personally, from what I know of the Army Reserve in this state. It is, the state is reasonably sized, and the Army Reserve Battalion, the 12th 40th Battalion, has two companies, one in the north and one in the south, and I think the distances involved and the recruiting base for the battalion is such that is fair and reasonable to have two separate bases. Those in Hobart are not going to go to Launceston to do their training. Now, earlier on, you were discussing with Colonel Byrne and others that the direction, apparently, is that will all move to Anglesey Barracks. I am familiar with Anglesey Barracks, and I fail to see where it can fit.
It doesn't fit.
But it was a big investment, and as a private citizen driving past the barracks, there were cranes and structures going up, and I remember commenting to my own family as we drove past that there's a lot of work going on in Derwent Barracks.
And without, I guess, labouring the point, but the question of why they're closing so much here in Tasmania and yet nationally they're not. How, has also been the point of contact for these, supposed consultations here in Tasmania. How has that made you, but also the Navy cadet community felt about, I guess, the way the defence bureaucracy in Canberra feels about your contribution?
Yeah, I think we're very, very disappointed. Whether you be the parent of a cadet, the member of a reserve unit that's here, or the public in general, there is a feeling of abandonment and as I said in my opening remarks, a lack of consistency in the way this is approached. I think there was a very liberal definition or accommodation of the force structure required around the north of our country, and it's not contestable. Of course it is. That's the north and the northwest and our naval base in Western Australia are vital to the provision of defensive capability to our armed forces and to enable their deployment from this country. There is no doubt about that. But the generation of national capability, that's just where you base the units, the fighting units, or as many as them you can fit in, whether it be Air Force, Navy or Army. And we do that pretty well, and we are investing more into it, and that's good. But remember, the people are generally trained, and the headquarters for much of it is in the south and the east of the country. And there's good reason, there's good strategic reason for this. And again, I'm not speaking for defence, but it is where industry is. It's where jobs for families are. The discussion earlier was on movement of people to the north. Now that did occur in the earlier 2000s, as was discussed, and for good reason. But it was overdone in a sense that those places such as Darwin were just not able to accommodate the families, their spousal employment and schools, etc., were just not up to it. And then there was, as was discussed, those that just disliked living in the tropics. Now that's why a whole battalion of infantry from the 1st Brigade was moved back from Darwin to Adelaide. And yes, they train. I recognise what Senator Lambie quite appropriately mentioned about the wonderful training areas up in the north.
It also hasn't helped the armoured to the split. They weren't big enough, so there's been a bit of a problem with that. So it's worked some way, but not yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance between keeping families happy and employed and schooled and etc. And I don't contest any of that. And there's fiddling at the edges, but the money going in to strengthen further what it is we have in the north, I absolutely agree with. But the generation of capability to put capable people and units into the north and the west, it starts right at the bottom of Australia and works its way north. And this state makes a contribution to defence by its people that are motivated by a service career and join the ADF. And the figures seem to indicate that per head of population, Tasmania presents one of the highest recruit bases in our country. And some wonderful people. The Navy names, as an aside, or to demonstrate that, the Navy names its Collins-class submarines after the Navy's, well-recognised heroes, if you like. 3 of those people, including Collins himself, are Tasmanian. and 15 of the country's 102 Victoria Cross recipients are Tasmanian. There is a great connection with defence. Industry in this state make a greater than per head of population and capability input to defence than I would suggest most other states, not in any way diluting the what other states do. And that is something I can speak with great authority on, having spent 8 years as the defence industry advocate. We started off with about 10 companies that made a contribution to defence. When I left, there was 71. And we achieved something like $400 to $500 million worth of investment in defence industry. So we make a great contribution there. We've been referring to the Australian Maritime College, which is Australia's national maritime college, but it has a sub-unit to it. It is the Defence Innovation and Design Precinct, which is part of the defence footprint. And it's been heavily funded. It's owned, of course, by the University of Tasmania. It is part of the AMC, but Defence, through the Defence Science and Technology Group, has contributed several tens of millions of dollars into expanding its often world-leading capabilities, and I mean that genuinely. The US Navy subcontract some of their research to the AMC in little old Tasmania.
Is this the Rat Pack research?
No, definitely not. No, this is hydrodynamics and hydrodynamic capability. Yes, it is, Senator, in Scottsdale, and that is also to be divested. But the AMC have for many years done work on hydrodynamics and cavitation research, which is the noise, if you like, generated by hulls and propulsion of both surface ships, but importantly submarines, through the water. So there's wonderful work being done by some amazing people. The commitment to defence is impressive. I'm not Tasmanian by background, so I'm sorry, Senator Lampy, but I do call it home now, and I think it is an extraordinary part of our country that is often not recognised for the contribution it makes. And this disassembling of its defence footprint, which is part of capability generation in one sense or another, directly or indirectly, is a great shame, and it will have an effect.
Well, thank you, Radmore. I'm going to pass the call and to Senator Lambie, and I think perhaps, I guess part of the question of why we heard this morning that, a lot of this is about political will, that a lot of this has been on the table for some time. And, with only, I guess, Labor representatives down here, it is easier to be able to do this stuff. But we have made sure that you've had your voice today so that we can hear this loud and clear. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about the Defence Hub, which is where INCAT is. I've seen the sign. I've never seen the action in there. What actually goes on in there for Defence, apart from Taylor Brothers, who fit out, if they're very lucky, get some naval jobs? What is going on at that Defence Hub that has actually been down there since your time? What was the opportunity there? The sign's there, and now I've got the opportunity to ask you, whatever happened to that?
It exists. Firstly, there's the person behind the sign, and there's about 6 signs in different rates. It's called the Defence Maritime and Defence and Maritime Precinct.
That's it.
So there's a lot of commercial maritime stuff that happens there, and INCAT does that. But there are a number of other companies that make great contribution to defence. Life Raft Systems Australia.
Yeah, I've been there, yes.
CBG
that.
Systems, which do...
But we've invented nothing new down there. We just put the sign there, yeah?
Yeah, it's there for very good reason. Sentinel boats, which provide watercraft to the New Zealand Navy, the Australian Special Forces, the Ukrainian Special Forces, and a number of others. Taylor Brothers, as you mentioned, and a handful of others that make componentry, etc. So it is a first-class area. The Richardson Devine Marine, another shipbuilder, currently building 2 23-metre vessels for the Royal Australian Navy. So,
Okay, and I'm assuming there's nothing left down there, even with INCAT's move, that that Navy can use whatsoever, since we have all the boats, the rest of them down there. There's nothing for the naval cadets down there.
no, it's a very,
I know there's
very
not much.
full area.
I
Yeah,
just
there's-
wasn't sure how much more with that INCAT. I know they're moving down further, whether they were going to.
They're actually maintaining that site, Senator.
Yeah,
in fact, they're
I knew
expanding
that.
it.
I just
yeah.
Okay.
So, but to answer your question, no, there's very little.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay. So I want to ask you about the aggression with China and Russia. You don't have to play in the game if you don't like, but with Antarctica, obviously the agreement's up to 2030. That aggression's going to get worse. There is no doubt about that. They're certainly not going to sit on the sideline. There's the new agreement coming in 2030. They'll want a big part of that. I know that we're all miles behind, and we go, yeah, so what? But quite frankly, it's starting to get quite aggressive over, over that parcel of ice, land, whatever you want to call it, and that is starting to bother me.
Yeah, and I think you should be bothered.
Okay, good.
As I said, backyards have back doors, and it's a very maritime area, and it is not something. It is not an environment where you can adapt very easily current force assets. Because of the very unique nature of the Southern Ocean.
Yeah, because we're not set up for Western ships and that properly either, are we? So if we do need that defence down here, we have nothing. You can't go and put them down at Hobart there.
There's unclassified information, Senator, which highlights what would be anticipated from a maritime trade perspective if ready access to the South China Sea and and importantly the Malacca Strait was contested or not available to global maritime trade.
Okay.
And it will force huge amounts of, very uncommercially, but from a safety perspective, huge amounts of shipping would be anticipated to transit the south of our country.
Right.
And Tasmania is obviously involved. Now we've seen the Chinese task group visit last year, and they have said that they, being the Chinese, have indicated, and I think we've acknowledged publicly, that it won't be the last time. And so, why do they feel it's necessary to transit the Southern Ocean, including being just south of Tasmania? So our ability to operate in the Southern Ocean is limited as it is. Now, it's true, Perth has a wonderful naval base and supports ships out of there, but it's a long way west, and we are further south and obviously a long way east. And I think the patch of land that is this state is a potentially important basing opportunity in the years ahead to counter what it is you're referring to. And what I said earlier on, I wrote the state's input to the Defence Strategic Review very unsuccessfully, clearly, to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you for appearing. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lambie. And thank you very much, Admiral Gilmore. I really appreciate your contributions today. And any questions on notice, could you please return them by the 4th of September? Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. Thanks for the opportunity.
I now welcome Captain Richard Morgan, and I believe Captain Timothy Hancock is appearing on teleconference. Other way around. Captain Richard Morgan on teleconference. Thank you very much. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to the Senate committees has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, would you please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear today, and we'll start with Mr Hancock.
No worries. I'm Mr Tim Hancock, and today I appear as a private citizen.
Thank you. Captain Morgan?
Hello, Richard Vincent Henry Morgan, and I'm appearing as a volunteer member of the Australian Navy Cadets, and my role in Navy Cadets is the National Commander of the organisation.
Thank you very much, Mr Morgan. Would either of you like to make a short opening statement today?
Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee for the opportunity to appear today Just for a bit of background, I was schooled here in Launceston. I was a cadet at 62 Army Cadet Unit, which I believe visited this morning. I then went on and served 14 years in the Australian Army. Post leaving Defence, I worked on Defence's own infrastructure planning for North of Australia. In my current role, I'm the Head of Programs and Governance at RSL Tasmania, responsible for delivery of veteran housing, and I'm the Officer Commanding of 67 Army Cadet Unit. I just want to make it clear to the Chair and the committee that I'm not speaking on behalf of either of organisations. I'm here as my own. For me, this is not just about real estate. Cadet teaches the values that underpin our Army and, dare I say, our nation, of courage, initiative, respect and teamwork. The program is increasingly focused on STEM and careers pipelines into defence and defence industry, well beyond the infantry stereotype. There are around 280 cadets in Tasmania, this is Army cadets, 35 adult volunteers like myself, and around 15 Army Reserve positions ran out of defence facilities that Defence is now divesting. At the time, it was trying to grow its workforce by 30% by 2040. Cadets is the largest user of the defence estate in Tasmania. As we've already heard, Northern Tasmania punches above its weight for defence. The Maritime College in Unum has been Navy's autonomous training systems partner since 2017, yet there's no permanent Navy presence up here to match it. No base, no depot, nothing beyond a training contract. More widely, Tasmania's generated just 0.08% of the nation's defence industry output in 23-24, the lowest of any state or territory-wide margin. The new multi-user depot that you saw here this morning turned dirt a few weeks ago. My information tells me that that has been in progress for around 7 years and has only been ticked off what appears to be on face value because of the start of the divestment process. That was won through sustained local advocacy for a very long time and has been delivered off the back of an election promise. The process is the problem. Government accepted all 20 Defence Estate recommendations and approved divestment of 67 of 68 sites in one sitting. Consultation didn't begin until the 31st of March, and within a week, the Department of Finance was already marketing dozens of properties for disposal. Best practice for community engagement is the IAP2, and Defence's own walk-in language offered after the sale process had already been started, the decision's already been made, sits at the lowest rung of that process, which is to inform. There has been no consultation or announcement about replacing facilities anywhere else in the state, for cadets or for the Army Reserve. Where Defence has an answer at all is that cadets should find a new lease in a community venue or school, even though the school-based model of cadets was retired nearly nationally 50 years ago. I put to the committee that Defence is trying to wash its hands of providing infrastructure to cadets. I put 4 things to the committee. That Defence commit to fund a capital program for purpose-built replacement cadet facilities wherever a site is divested, not a bare promise of leased land. Secondly, that assessment of sites be tested against workforce generation and strategic opportunities such as future fuels in Bell Bay and the Maritime College at Newnham, not property utilisation alone. Defence be held to at least collaborate and involve affected users in decision-making and engagement around remaining estate decisions. And with many Tasmanian sites without resolution, give them the opportunity to reach an outcome similar to Launceston without forcing them to fight as hard for it or be told this is the outcome. I'm not asking the committee to reject rationalisation in principle. Ageing infrastructure should be replaced with new purpose-built facilities, not quietly divested and left for cadets, schools and communities to sort it out. Cadets as a program, all 3 services, does much for young Tasmanians. Defence's own workforce pipeline and for a fraying sense of youth belonging deserves to be more than an afterthought in someone else's property sale. I asked the committee to test this process. In my view, The current divestment plan is half a plan, which is no plan, and this is most definitely half a plan. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr Hancock. Mr Morgan, Captain Morgan, would you like to make a short and opening statement?
Yes, I've prepared something for that. Just as well for background, I've had 43 years in the Australian Army Cadets before transferring to the Navy Cadets 4 years ago. So I've got a pretty broad view of the whole cadet program. And I'm based in Sydney, and I apologise I'm not with you in person in Launceston today. But thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. The Australian Navy Cadets program provides young Australians with opportunities to develop confidence, leadership, resilience, and a sense of service through our structured activities, mentoring and practical learning in the maritime environment. The safety and well-being of our cadets is our highest priority, supported through comprehensive safeguarding measures, screening processes and volunteer training. The program is inclusive, welcoming young people from diverse backgrounds and abilities, and it strengthens connections between youth, families, schools, communities and the Navy right across Australia. The Australian Navy Cadets operates from 81 locations nationally, including 7 in Tasmania. Almost 2,800 young people participate in the program, supported by more than 500 dedicated volunteers. Until recently, cadet numbers were growing steadily. Following the announcement of the Defence Estate Review, that growth has stalled in Tasmania as uncertainty about the future of the units there has increased. Our concern is simple. Defence estate planning must recognise and accommodate the unique requirements of Navy cadet units. Our facilities are not simply meeting places. They support activity-based maritime learning activities, secure storage for our boats, trailers and equipment, administration, uniform stores, workshops and facilities for cooking and communal activities. These are essential for delivering the cadet experience safely and effectively. We are particularly concerned by the lack of consultation undertaken as part of the Delivering the Future Defence Estate Review. The first volunteers, cadets and their families heard of the proposed changes was through the public announcement on the 4th of February. The reaction, of course, across Tasmania was one of shock and uncertainty. These proposals have significant potential consequences for units in St Helens, Hobart, Burnie, Devonport, Launceston and Georgetown, as well as Toowoomba in Queensland. With the Australian Navy Cadets, we represent a small part of the defence organisation. The review disproportionately affects our facilities and, by extension, the communities we serve. 7 out of 7 Tasmanian sites are on a very low or no-cost lease basis. In places such as St Helens, cadet facilities are valued community assets that provide support during emergencies and for local community activities. In some locations, there are few, if any, suitable alternatives. The evidence consistently shows that the value of cadet programs. In 2025, a review by the University of Northampton concluded that the UK cadet forces provide young people with, I quote, structured challenge, discipline, training, education, and importantly, fun, unquote. Similar findings have been made in Australia for decades. The 2021 Topley Review described ADF cadets' purpose as helping young people, quote, develop their potential to contribute to the Australian community, unquote. More recently, former cadets contributing to the Page Research Centre's review spoke of a program that had, quote, transformed their lives, unquote, while the report itself concluded that, quote, build character and you build a nation, unquote. We ask that the committee carefully consider the unintended impacts of the Defence Estate decisions on cadets, volunteers, family and regional communities and ensure that the long-term value of cadet programs is fully recognised in future planning. Thank you, Senators.
Thank you very much, Captain Morgan. I'll pass the call to Senator Blyth.
Thank you very much to you both for appearing and giving evidence today. Can I just start with, and probably Captain Morgan, this is probably something, I guess, with your experience within the cadets. What is the feel and the morale amongst cadets, particularly in Tasmania at the moment? Because they're obviously hearing about all of this. What's that doing to their morale of our young people?
I have spoken directly to some of our staff and cadets, and they're just flabbergasted. The morale is low as a result of this. It's sort of like we've whipped their facility away from them, or going to, and they just don't see what the future brings as a result.
Which is the opposite impact that you want to have, and I think, you know, in your opening statement you went through of all of the different amazing skills that you want to impart with cadets. It seems sort of we're doing the exact opposite to them in terms of what impact this program is going to have on them. In terms of, and you've spoken a little bit around the types of facilities that are needed for cadets, and it's highly specialised, and we're not going to pick a favourite, whether it's Army, Navy or Air Force cadets, but each has its own particular, I guess, skills and capabilities. How do you see then when you talk about having these sites that are designed to be multi-use? Do you see that as having an impact on what each of those, I guess, specialised streams can offer to our cadets?
Look, we have a number of multi-user depots around Australia, and I've seen them in various locations and contexts. And indeed, in my last role in the AAC, I worked in the multi-user depot at Holsworthy Barracks here in Sydney. And each unit has its unique requirements, but a well-designed multi-user depot does have the options for each of the units to make good use of them. But I notice at Holsworthy today, the area that was designed as a storage area is used as the classroom facility where we've set up our bridge simulator, because it's the biggest space that is totally secure for the ANC to have its large screens and computers set up in a permanent fashion, which means, of course, then there's less room for storage of your uniforms and other equipment. The areas that are shared, of course, there has to be all the workarounds to make sure that they are being shared properly. So that's the classroom, lecture room area, kitchens and those sorts of things. So multi-user depot makes a lot of sense, but it does have, it has to be bigger and have slightly more specialised places to service the three types of cadets.
And can I just ask, and we've had different evidence, and I think we were in Queenscliff earlier this week where it was sort of claimed that those cadets there were the best at flying drones, and then we've heard evidence today that perhaps it's here in Launceston. But in terms of being able to share with reserves, and if you've got a sort of base where it's actually operating, do things like exercises and training for young cadets where they are flying drones, are there limitations in terms of being able to undertake those activities if you're on a working base as well?
Absolutely. So a working base prevents you flying drones, particularly if there is air traffic on that base, for example, and so yes, it does restrict us. And also, there's this whole security aspect, of course, because you're behind the wire when you're in there, and it increases the level of difficulty for access, particularly for people like parents when you're having an activity that involves parents to come and watch, for example.
Sorry, and did you...
Mr. Hancock may have something to say too.
Army cadets in particular had struggles with facilities to be able to teach drones in Tasmania. We're often restricted to using the Mini-Whoop, which is just a commercial off-the-shelf drone. Yep. There are 2 sites in Hobart that are currently leased that I'm sure Defence will wash its hands of those leases as soon as they can. There are a large commercial kind of shed where you can run the bigger drones, but certainly that's a limitation. Cadets we can't operate our larger drones at either of the Defence sites because they're a commercial off-the-shelf property product that comes from China, and Defence has banned all of those, as the training and the surveillance and observation unit that's down at Patterson Barracks has the same problem, is they were using a commercial off-the-shelf product to train target acquisition out at Stony Head, and they're unable to fly those drones, and as far as I'm aware, they don't have a replacement currently.
So it seems like you can only fly drones if you're maybe not part of the defence into defence bases.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing is that infiltration that's been happening across the country. I think I will, that's probably enough questions from me. You've both been very, very thorough, but thank you both. I think it's fair to say, the cadets are such a huge part of the pipeline into defence, where you said 30% move through, and certainly it's something we don't want to make harder to participate in for our young people, because it's an incredible program to be part of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Blythe. And we don't have Senator Lambie down there, do we? All right, well, I'll pass the call to myself. Mr. Hancock, you made the comment Defence should involve the users when they make decisions like this. So can you just, I guess, draw a little bit more out of that?
Sure.
And I guess your assessment of the consultation process, and I guess whether they would come to, let's say, completely different conclusions had they done that.
Yeah, I think I've probably got 2 things. I think the terms of reference really restrict, of the original estate review, really restrict anything outside of a usage type being considered. So there was no real value given to heritage, although it was in the terms of reference. It really come down to, how much did X defence facility cost per year to run and maintain into the future, and what was the amount of usage by defence people and cadets and like across that kind of time period. And it was a very financial, I suppose, review, desktop review of how that was done. There was very little kind of, I suppose, certainly no consultation from the user group around what this is now. I mean, community consultation, social licence, all these things that government should be providing exemplars around how to do this. It shouldn't be this, we've made the decision and now we're chasing our tail, trying to work out some half-baked solution for the people that are affected by the decisions that have been made.
And it seems to me extraordinary that you said, was it 7 out of 15 of the Tasmanian sites are on a low or no cost basis. We've got sites right across Australia that Defence owns, and they're moving them across into newly purchased land, and in the case here in Launceston, where the new multi-user depot is a third of the size of Youngtown, and yet they had to buy that land and then build upon it. So can you just, I guess, talk a little bit more about the financial, I guess, the inconsistencies in the rationale in terms of those low to no cost sites, and just talk a little bit about why they are low or no cost?
Yeah,
So, have you got that?
I was listening before. There's online, like the defence estate in Tasmania has been under scrutiny for divestment for a numbered period of time. I served down the road as a full-time member from 2011 to 2013. Patterson Barracks had been in the news around being sold for a very long time. If I remember correctly, I think then Defence Minister Maurice Payne made an announcement about the essentially the gifting of the land across to Launceston City Council. Now, if you look at Defence still owns that land. I don't think Council's been very well engaged about what that process looks like. Now, I would argue that a lot of the current footprint in Tasmania isn't fit for purpose. Like Patterson Barracks is not a great facility for cadets, but it's somewhere that we can use. Yes, it has more space than the potential multi-user depot, but I think for a providing facilities perspective in regards to modern spaces for cadets to go through their learning, I think the multi-user depot is a good option, although domain-centric training, so across air, land and sea, has its own requirements, and it appears to be very shoved into that requirement. Yeah, I'll end my comment there.
Yeah.
So, could I just add?
Please.
Yeah, looking at Training Ship Argonaut at St Helens, for example, it's a small community, and that relies on primarily the community to support that unit. And sure, Defence has an overview and an overlay and governance and uniforms and various things, but the cost there is a $1 a year lease to the council who owns the land. But Break a Day Council, they provided tens of thousands of dollars to help the project along when the most recent upgrades were done, including water and sewage and those sorts of things. The council maintains the land around the buildings at no cost to the cadets. It provides a space big enough and with enough facilities for all the Navy cadets in Tasmania to gather there for CAPS and flotilla activities, as we call them. So, yeah, there's other people in the community, the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, the Tip Shop, the RSL, etc., all involved in supporting and helping that unit continue in that site. So, in terms of value, big bang for its buck in terms of that community.
So we heard this morning that the reason this is going ahead now, I mean, there's been talks about divestment for decades, but the reason it's going ahead now is that there is the political will to do that. But do you think it has the social licence to do that in these communities, to sell all these sites?
It hasn't spent any time developing that.
Not in the communities, because the communities absolutely enjoy and benefit from their young people having a great activity to do that is not school, that is an alternative to sport, but a very active alternative to sport, and of course has this huge benefit that it provides a defence presence and defence outlook for young people in those regional communities. And quite a lot of those kids go on to join the Defence Force and therefore are essentially providing that support for the nation from those small communities.
So the presence in these communities is really important for the social licence of defence. Do you think, given your experience with the Cadets program, it's particularly important for young people around their sense of community, responsibility, obligation, volunteerism, but also mental health?
Yeah, 100%. So
certainly, mental health builds their character and makes them better people.
Yeah, and certainly in a time where we're talking about social cohesion and all these, role modelling behaviour from good adults, I think it is, Army Cadets is kind of, across most of Australia, is Defence's only footprint in a lot of towns. The flow-on effect that removal of, I suppose, cadet basic across Tasmania. Now, Launceston's pretty lucky it's got its things sorted, but there's no identified solution for Burnie, there's no identified solution for Devonport, and there's no identified solution for the Navy Cadets across the whole state, and certainly no great solution for Hobart writ large. I think that's kind of my annoyance with the program, with the divestment process, is it's all great that you identified that these things are to be divested, but you've sold the solution of the replacement of those facilities down the road into a process that isn't really being designed to do that, and should have been done at the start, so that you're announcing that you're closing the thing, and then, well, actually, this is the plan that's costed, funded, partway down a development application approval pathway to say, hey, this is going to be your new facility for where you go. Then a lot of these questions disappear.
And Captain Morgan, would you like to just sort of reflect a little? We've heard, I guess, the term resilience contributed at the beginning of this submission. So would you like to reflect a little bit on that as well for the young people?
Look, the young people will gravitate towards the program because of the activity that they're going to, and the experiences they're going to have. And I can tell you that having a good place where that occurs is really important. Perhaps having it in a classroom at the school that you don't go to, or the school that you do go to, is a bit of a turn-off for those kids. They like going to their specific facility where they can get their hands on the equipment. In our case, they can get the boats out of the boat shed. In most cases in Tasmania, they can then launch those boats, and we can then teach them sailing and other maritime skills. And that is the huge plus that we have that attracts and keeps those young people there. While they're doing all of that, they're having fun, but they don't realise how much they're learning and the skills that they're actually gaining. And you see this in the more senior cadets who have come through our leadership programs, and they become fine young people for the benefit of our community across the board.
Thank you, Captain Morgan. I'm going to pass the call to my colleague, Senator Lambie.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to talk about funding, because I don't think Defence has been very nice to cadets for years. Does anyone understand, Captain Morgan, have you got any understanding of funding for cadets right across the board, whether it's naval, obviously aviation, or army cadets?
Senator, within my role, we officers of cadets don't get involved in the budgetary side of things because that's our leadership in the Navy Reserve. In our case, they handle all of that. But the only thing I know is that for the 2026-7 financial year, there's been a 6% cut in funding for Navy cadets.
Yes. Do you know why? Since there's so much money flying around in defence and they're all about recruiting people, do you understand why? Is it just me, or what's going on here? What does this mean, 6% cut? Are they using the buildings for this?
The thing that I do know is that the programs, the deliverables to our cadets have not been touched, and so in that sense, that's good. Other areas where there've been trimming has been occurring, but again, I'm not privy to those details at all.
Do you have any idea? Can you already see where they're trimming? Do you have any idea where they think they're going to trim with cadets? From what you know?
No, I don't, Senator. No, I don't.
Okay. All right. So you don't know, has there been any consultation on the trimming of cadets that you know of?
Look, as said, they've told us very clearly, it is not affecting the delivery of the cadet program. So I am aware that our national activities, our flotilla-based activities, which are largely state-based, and the activities of the units and our equipment is all flowing and continuing as we have expected it to be in the past. So we are not being disadvantaged from that point of view.
Are you hearing anything different, Mr. Hancock?
Not really. My observation, I spent a fair bit of time as a cadet, then spent a chunk of time in uniform, and then back in uniform in a volunteer capacity as a cadet officer. I think cadets has been relatively abused for a long time when it comes to funding.
It's still going on.
The difference in Tasmania and Holsworthy's great. It's got a great multi-user depot, but it has a huge army presence on the same barracks.
Yeah.
There is no big army, navy, or air force in Tasmania, so the program that we deliver here at the state level is very different than what you can do throughout the rest of the country. We've got kids that can't, we don't even get boots.
Yeah.
In the right size.
Thank you.
For them to be able to wear. So,
it's really bad.
When you talk, I think about, Army is there to enable and to support what Army Cadets delivers.
Yeah.
The Army Cadet volunteers are the ones that actually kind of supervise and deliver the program as far as safety and supervision and those sorts of things.
But you're relying on your reserve units, which are already running on the smell of an oily rag for their own reserves.
When I was a cadet, 62 was 110 strong. I think on a Wednesday they're probably about 30 strong. And that's kind of almost a direct correlation in between the Army Reserve numbers across the state. The cadet numbers have dropped down similarly so there's not these relationships with the units like there used to be. There was a very well-trodden path from, you'd age out at 18 years old, Army cadet, and you'd roll down to the battalion.
That's right.
Well, you look at it. Later, you've got the same uniform back on in a slightly different.
You look at it, Kokoda. You look at it, 44 transport, no problem. I did Army Reserve. Well, I was just there on compassionate posting. Seeing the mix between there, it was great. Sometimes the cadets work with us. They loved it. It was a really good opportunity to mix with there was no problem. They had served on their own night, obviously, but I'm hearing over the years their numbers are reduced too. It's just it's something that the military, to me, cannot be bothered with anymore. They don't see a purpose in it because they'd rather go and spend billions of dollars on recruiting and using an outside firm because they can't get the job done, and you wonder why.
It is a directed activity for Chief of Army. It sits on the list of things that he wants or she wants done now. How much actual financial input is given to that is probably as little as it can in order to survive.
I don't see her standing on a pedestal yelling out to me, and I don't see much hope.
And our best comparator is the UK, where over a significant period of time they've invested millions of pounds of money into the cadet program across the country. It's got nothing to do with kind of military outputs or getting people in uniform later on. It's all around youth development and giving kids in the UK, I think similar to what John Hardy was saying, an opportunity to be able to develop positive skills that you can contribute back to the Australian society outside of the school. And that's what I gained out of Army Cadets doing it here out of little old Tasmania. Was would I have joined the Defence Force afterwards? I don't know, but it certainly didn't help. It didn't hurt, sorry. And those skills about leadership, kind of caring for others, all these kind of basic life skills, first aid, navigation, they all benefit the country. People throughout their
whether you're go on serving or not, those skill sets can never be lost. So,
Senator, last week I was on base at HMAS Cuttable in uniform and was moving through the base, and a Navy lieutenant stopped me and said, "You're the National Commander of the Australian Navy Cadets." He recognised the special badge of rank we wear. And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I just want to say cadets was the best thing for me. That's why I'm here in the Navy today." And I absolutely loved it. And by the way, give my best wishes to so-and-so because they're still doing it. They're still one of the officers. So just, it happens all the time with people who are in uniform who have been through cadets who've just had this amazing experience.
Yeah, I think us in uniform that have worn that actually get this. The only people that don't are the people that don't seem to have worn the uniform that are sitting up there in government, with all due respect to the Labor people sitting here today. But I'm starting to really pull my hair out. I need those cadets. Our social, we've got more kids that are more kids out there that are certainly those kids most at risk. And if the government doesn't have the courage to send them to boot camps, then for Christ's sake send them towards cadets, because something needs to be put in place. Anyway, thank you. I have no further questions. We'll be up there fighting for you guys. I want to see this moving. I want to see more cadets around, not bloody less, and we need to spend money on them and give those opportunities and take them out of the units and show them the big wide world. That's what needs to be done to keep them interested, so they're talking to their mates to bring them in.
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Just a couple of questions for you, Captain Morgan. You hold the position of National Commander for the Australian Navy Cadets. Is that? I mean, you're based in Sydney, aren't you?
I think that's where I live and work. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Have you seen any other part of Australia as impacted by this divestment process as Tasmania is going to be?
No, I haven't. So in simple numerical terms, there are 6 units from the Navy Cadets being impacted there, and we have 1 unit in South Queensland being impacted. So that's it. The rest of out of our 81 units, they're the ones being impacted, and Tasmania takes the cake.
And why do you think Tasmania has taken such a big hit?
Look, I think most of our facilities are what you might call standalone. So they're just a Navy Cadet unit occupying the site. They're all right on the water or close to. Perhaps that means they have more value in the future because they're on the waterfront. And the ones I have seen in Tasmania, there are some that are quite, what shall we say, they're older buildings, older structures, and probably could do with a coat of paint and some extra maintenance. But of course we do have the newer ones too that have been built for the purpose of Navy Cadets. Toowoomba, for example, I know it's not Tassie, but in Toowoomba, a heritage drill hall with its amenities has been recently fully restored by the government, and it's a multi-user depot for Army, Navy and Air Force cadets, and it's a brilliant facility. It's perfect for all 3 of us using it, and it's going to be divested, in the middle of Toowoomba. So.
Sorry, can you? Which particular site was that at? You said Toowoomba.
Yes, it's Training Ship Toowoomba, and I just can't remember the name of the actual depot, but it's a multi-user depot inside the wire in the middle of Toowoomba in the city.
Thank you. And are you aware of how much the investment was into that site?
No, I'm not. No.
And how recently was the?
Wasn't a small amount. I think it was in the last 12 months. Handed back in the last 12 months to us.
Do you know when that began?
I would say it would have been at least a 1.5 year project. Just looking at it, I was up there only a few weeks ago and saw it.
That is very helpful, thank you. And the unit in southeast Queensland, why is that one up for divestment?
Look, again, I don't have the actual reasons in front of me, but I'm assuming that it being pretty well in the centre of Toowoomba, residential area, it's probably been ticks the box for
that's
housing.
That's what we're talking about. My apologies.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to get my head around. So, you said before that across Tasmania, the smaller standalone sites, they make sense in terms of the context of Tasmania, in terms of it being the most regional state, small communities. We don't have large Army presence here, Air Force presence here, but the small sites actually make sense in terms of the Tasmanian context. Is that right?
Yes, and people who want to bring their kids, their mums and dads who want to bring their kids to these units, travel through windy roads and hills and valleys, and they get to these units, and they make that effort, and it just builds that whole community character.
Are you aware of any other units that had big investments over the past couple of years?
Look, I'd have to take that as a question on notice, and we could provide a proper list.
I'm not aware of any capital investment in Tasmania. There's been 2 commercial leases in Hobart that I understand are quite expensive per year, but as far as actual capital investment for, purpose-built facilities, very little, if none.
Are they new leases?
They're relatively new buildings, so they would be relatively new leases, yes.
And what are they for? Where are they?
They are for cadet units in Cambridge and at Bridgewater.
Okay.
They're nothing special. They're just a big shed, and some offices and some training rooms and things like that.
Sound critical to the work that you do. All right. Thank you. If you could provide some of that information to the Secretariat by Friday the 4th of September, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Well, that concludes the hearing today. I want to thank you very much for your time and your contributions to this particular inquiry. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here. And I want to thank Hansard and Broadcasting for their support as well. Thank you for coming all the way down to Tasmania. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Senators. Bye-bye.
The hearing is adjourned.